that Tsundere goddess falls in love with me. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 651 Black-Hearted Pavilion Master. As soon as Tsundere and his men returned to the mansion, Liang Danian and his men came over. Liang Danian was stopped by someone when he arrived at the gate of the Zun mansion. "Why are you here to visit me?" Liang Danian looked at the other party and immediately shouted angrily, "You don't know who I am? You still ask me what I want to do? Hurry up and open the door for me." The guards were frightened by the other party's momentum and could only open the door obediently. Both guards knew Liang Danian and knew that he had a very high reputation in Xianshu City and was not someone to be trifled with. Liang Danian led his men into the Zun family mansion and happened to run into Zun Xianheng. After seeing Liang Danian, Zun Xianheng hurried over. "Master Liang, how come you have the time to visit our Zun family in person today?" Liang Danian smiled awkwardly. "I'm here to find Zun Xianyu. Is he back?" "He should be back. He's staying with a few guests now and is not dealing with family affairs for the time being. If you have anything to say, you can talk to me." Liang Danian shook his head slightly. "No need for that. I'm here to find him." "Okay, he's in the west yard. Go find him." After saying that, Zun Xianheng walked out of the Zun mansion. Liang Danian took a deep breath, his brain still thinking about what to say when he sees someone later. He followed the path in the yard and came to the west yard. In the yard, Zun Xianyu and others had just returned. After Liang Danian walked into the yard, everyone looked over. After seeing Liang Danian, Lu Chuan hurriedly asked, "Why did you chase me?" Zun Xianyu turned around and looked at him curiously. "Master Liang, what are you doing here?" Liang Danian sat on a stone chair beside him and smiled kindly. "I thought about it carefully. My attitude just now was really problematic. I came here to apologize to you. I'm really sorry. Master Liang, you should get straight to the point. You definitely didn't come here just to apologize this time." Zun Xianyu knew this man very well, so he said it so decisively. Liang Danian sighed helplessly. "Okay, it's like this. Our master Wanning is very interested in the sword in this gentleman's hand. He wants to study it. It may take a day or two to study it." Zun Xianyu frowned slightly. "Didn't you say that this is just scrap metal? Then why let him study it? He seems to have seen some clues and some extraordinary things, but we haven't figured out the specific situation yet, so he still wants to take the sword over and study it himself for a while, maybe 3 to 5 days, or maybe a week. In short, we will get the results as soon as possible and return them to you." He showed a kind smile, trying his best to let Zun Xianyu and the others let down their guard from the outside. Zun Xianyu looked at Lu Chuan and asked, "What do you mean? Do you want to take it for identification? Then let's go there again. Anyway, we have nothing to do now." Liang Danian stood up quickly and said with a smile, "Don't bother you. I'm sure you will be tired after running back and forth several times. Otherwise, I will take it back myself and let him study it carefully. When the results come out, I will bring the things to you immediately. How about it?" His proposal made Zun Xianyu and Lu Chuan fall into deep thought. This guy looks pretty good. He actually wants to help others bring things. However, this is completely inconsistent with his personality just shown. Would he, who likes to be high and mighty, be so polite to help others bring things? If it is just for identification, then he will come to inform at most, and then go home directly. Why bother? Lu Chuan felt something was wrong. Could it be that this guy already knew the actual situation of this sword, and then became greedy, and wanted to take it all for himself? Although Lu Chuan guessed so, there was no evidence, so it was hard to say at the moment. Zun Xianyu saw Liang Danian smiling so kindly, thinking that this was an opportunity to improve his relationship with him, so he quickly looked at Lu Chuan and said, "Then please trouble them to bring the things over, so we don't have to make another trip. It's troublesome to run back and forth. We'll go get it when the results come out." Liang Danian was immediately excited when he heard this. "Friend, did you hear what Zun Xianyu said? Take out the sword, and you won't have to go over in person. Lu Chuan took 2 steps back and stared at Liang Danian. Liang Danian's face suddenly froze when he saw this, and he asked, "What do you mean? I came to you in person, and you don't give me face?" Zhan Xianyu suddenly became nervous. He didn't want to offend either of these 2 people. "Master Liang, you think too much. There is no such thing as not giving him face. Give him the bronze sword and let him take it back for identification. He will send it back when the result comes out. Master Liang has seen countless treasures and is in a high position. He is still trustworthy." Lu Chuan shook his head slightly. "If he finds an excuse in a few days and says that he lost the bronze sword, who can I complain to?" Liang Danian's face turned cold instantly. "What do you mean by this? Do I want to steal a broken sword from you? You look down on me too much. Don't worry, this sword is absolutely safe with us. There will be no risk. No more than 3 days. We will give you the result immediately. How about it? If you don't want to know the secret of this sword, then I will pretend that I didn't say it. I will go home and pretend that I have never been here." Zhan Xianyu looked at Lu Chuan and said, "Why not? Let him take it back for a search. The divine weapon pavilion is so big, the monk can run away, but the temple cannot." Hearing this, Lu Chuan nodded slightly. "You are right. It is true that the monk can run away, but the temple cannot. In this case, I will let you take it back and study it for 2 days. If I can't get any results, I will come to find you. If you dare to lose the sword, I will destroy your divine weapon pavilion." Liang Danian was furious when he heard this. "Don't worry, you won't have this chance. Just give the thing to me." Lu Chuan took off the scabbard and handed it to Liang Danian. "Remember what I said. I will give you 2 days at most." Liang Danian forced a smile and nodded slightly. "Don't worry, just wait for my news. I'll leave first. I will come to you as soon as I get the results." After that, he left with the bronze sword. Zhan Xianyu looked at Lu Chuan and said with doubt, "Why do I feel that Liang Danian is weird? It doesn't matter. If he dares to hack my sword, I will make his entire Shenbing pavilion pay the price. I must find out the origin of this sword and remove the seal on it. This sword is very unusual. If the seal can be removed, it may show a more powerful effect." Chapter 652, Sword Seal. After Liang Danian got the sword, he hurried back to the Divine Weapon Pavilion. As soon as he entered the gate, he saw Wanning standing there waiting. "Master, what's the situation?" He walked forward and asked. "I have got the weapon. Take a closer look. Is this the soul-breaking sword recorded in the book?" Wanning walked forward and took the scabbard from his hand. Then, he pulled out the bronze sword. The sword body was covered with a layer of bronze, which was covered tightly and there was almost no gap. If you just look at the sword body, you can't see any clues. The sword body is sealed very badly, without any gaps. It's really strange. What kind of person would seal this sword? Liang Danian guessed. "Do you think it is possible that this sword is too powerful and cannot be controlled, so the original owner of the sword sealed it?" "It's possible." Wanning nodded slightly, looked up at Liang Danian, and asked, "By the way, why didn't that person come? Did you take the sword directly from him?" "I said to bring it back for him to identify it. In order not to trouble him, I didn't let him come in person." "Haven't we already identified the results? Can't we tell him directly?" Wanning asked, a little confused. He obviously didn't understand Liang Danian's intentions. Liang Danian shook his head helplessly and sighed. "You really don't know anything except sword forging. I'll find an excuse to take the sword and tell him I'll send it over in 3 or 4 days. When the time comes, he'll come to get the things, and I can just find an excuse to get away with it." Wanning's eyes widened immediately, looking at Liang Danian in disbelief. "Pavilion Master, are we going to swallow that man's sword?" "Nonsense, wouldn't it be a pity not to swallow such a good sword? You just said that this sword is a top-grade immortal weapon in Kunlun domain. If the seal is lifted, it will definitely be a rare divine weapon. If I get this sword, won't my strength reach the peak? At that time, I can also be regarded as a famous big man in the entire Kunlun domain." He laughed triumphantly and began to imagine his future life after reaching the top. He had heard of the concept of immortal weapon before, but had never seen it. and his divine weapon pavilion had never received a single immortal weapon, let alone forged one. I'm afraid that only the main pavilion of the divine weapon pavilion could be lucky enough to obtain 1 or 2 immortal weapons. Pavilion Master, the other party will definitely not buy your words. They are still members of the Zen family. If we offend them, we will definitely have a conflict with them. Wanning said with a worried look on his face, as if he thought this was not a good thing. What are you afraid of them doing? I will say that the sword is lost, and tell them that after the appraisal, this sword is just a rubbish defective product. At that time, I will just pay some gold and the matter will be over. Wanning was still a little uneasy. Will there really be no problems if we do this? Don't worry, when I left, that guy threatened me that if he didn't see this sword in a few days, he would destroy us or something like that. The kid is bragging. Who believes him? We are such a big divine weapon pavilion. Are we afraid of him? Liang Danian said confidently. After hearing this, Wanning just sighed helplessly. He is just a worker here. The divine weapon pavilion is only a branch in Xianshu City. In this branch, the highest swordsmith is of the 7th grade. As a 5th grade swordsmith, he is also a skilled master here. But after all, he is just a swordsmith, not the real manager. Faced with Liang Danian's choice, he could only choose to accept it helplessly. Now, you go and unseal this sword. I want to see if this is the soul-breaking sword on the weapon list. He handed the bronze sword to Wanning and asked him to unseal it. However, Wanning was in a dilemma. Although he could see that the sword was sealed, he had no idea how to unseal it, which made him feel a little embarrassed. Master, I really don't know how to unseal it. This is the first time I have encountered such a situation. Hearing this, Liang Danian frowned and stared at Wanning. What did you say? You don't know how to unseal it? Then what's the point of me getting this sword? If it can't be unsealed, then isn't it just a broken sword? Wanning nodded helplessly. That's right. If it can't be unsealed, the true power of this sword will definitely not be brought into play. Pavilion Master, you must know that I'm just a 5th grade swordsmith. How can I unseal the seal imposed on this top level immortal weapon? Then what should I do? I can't waste this weapon in vain. Liang Danian said very aggrievedly. He finally thought of a way to get the sword, but in the end he couldn't use it. This was simply too frustrating. How about this? We hand this sword over to the head office of the Divine Weapon Pavilion. They should have a top swordsmith there, and maybe they can find a way to unseal the sword. Liang Danian's face suddenly turned cold. If I hand it over to them, wouldn't it be like handing over the treasure for nothing? I can't do this kind of thing. Wanning, study some ancient books carefully to see if you can find a special way. If you can unseal this sword, I promise you that you can have whatever you want in this divine weapon pavilion. Although Wanning was very embarrassed, he still nodded helplessly. He knew that Liang Danian was very stubborn and would definitely fight to the death. He could only agree to it first. As for whether he could find a way to unseal it, he could only let it go. However, it was really a bit too much for him, a 5th grade swordsmith, to get involved in the immortal weapon. At the same time, on Lu Chuan's side, after they sent the sword out, Guziaora and Guziasang had been very worried. Can the sword be taken back? Why do I feel it's hanging? Guziasang looked at Lu Chuan and asked. Don't worry about it, you two. I'll give them 2 days. Tomorrow night, I'll go find them directly. If they don't hand over the bronze sword, I'll kill them all. If they dare to send the bronze sword somewhere outside, I'll be merciless. In any case, the fact that Liang Danian went to such great lengths to come here shows that they saw some clues from the bronze sword, which made this guy change his mind. Maybe I can really learn something from them. After Lu Chuan's careful analysis, he didn't think too much about it. He just had to wait until tomorrow night to visit the Divine Weapon Pavilion in person. Chapter 653 Playing Rogue. The next day, in the Divine Weapon Pavilion, Wanning was in the book pavilion, flipping through countless ancient books, and piled them up into a small hillside beside him. But after searching through countless ancient books, he still couldn't find a way to completely unseal the soul-breaking sword. Perhaps, the person who tied the bell can only untie it. The seal imposed by the sword's owner can only be broken by the sword's owner, or by a strong person of the same level. Liang Danian came to the book pavilion and saw Wanning flipping through so many ancient books, and he immediately smiled. Wanning, what's the result? Do you have any ideas? He walked over quickly and looked at Wanning with an expectant look on his face. Wanning still shook his head helplessly. I stayed here all night yesterday, flipped through various ancient books, and tried in the forging room, but up to now, I still haven't found a feasible way. In other words, you can't open the seal of this bronze sword. Liang Danian's face became cold, and his eyes stared at Wanning, which brought him a great pressure. Master Pavilion Master, please understand that my strength is limited. I have tried my best, but no matter what, I can't find a way to lift the seal. Is there really no way at all? He asked in a serious tone. Wanning nodded again. There is really no way. I can't do anything. This is a top-grade immortal weapon. I'm absolutely not qualified to touch it at my level. Liang Danian sighed deeply and said helplessly, in this way, don't I get a broken sword, useless scrap metal? Although the seal cannot be broken, it is still the soul-breaking sword. Its own value still exists here. Liang Danian suddenly realized after hearing this, I know, its value is still there. Although I can't use it directly, I can still make use of it. For example, find a few top families in Kunlun domain to make a deal, or exchange weapons with some big guys, even if it's an inferior one. It doesn't matter if you exchange it for an inferior one. After all, it's a big profit. In this way, my efforts will not be in vain. He smiled faintly. He felt a little sorry that he couldn't lift the seal, but it was not impossible to use it. He could still make a lot of money by exchanging it for an inferior weapon. Well, it seems that this is the only way. When the auction is held in Xianshu City in a while, I will see if I can find a strong buyer at the auction. He sighed helplessly. When he went to bed last night, he was still imagining the scene of himself holding the soul-breaking sword and becoming the top swordsman in Kunlun domain. However, this picture has been broken, and he can only shake his head and not think about it. When he turned around and prepared to leave, a servant walked in quickly, looked at Liang Danian, and said respectfully, Master, there are two people visiting outside the door, one of whom is Zhen Xianyu from the Zhen family. They said they came to get something back. Liang Danian was furious when he heard this. These two bastards, didn't I say I would return it in 3 or 4 days? Why are you in such a hurry to come here? He cursed inwardly, and then walked out quickly. Wanning, hide the sword, and wait for me to come back. Then, Liang Danian walked out quickly. He came to the gate of the compound, and saw the figures of Zhen Xianyu and Lu Chuan. At this time, Lu Chuan was still wearing a veil, staring directly at Liang Danian. Liang Danian walked over quickly, with some displeasure on his face, and asked, what are you two doing here? Don't you know what we are doing here? Lu Chuan asked back immediately. I don't have the ability to read minds. How can I know? You took the bronze sword I gave you yesterday back for identification. Did you get any results? Zhen Xianyu asked. Liang Danian looked at Zhen Xianyu and said, didn't I tell you? It will take 3 or 4 days to get the results. Why are you panicking? Zhen Xianyu stared at Liang Danian and asked, you'd better tell the truth. It doesn't take 3 or 4 days to identify equipment. It can be done in an afternoon. Why waste so much time? Liang Danian said confidently, it's our business, and you, an outsider, shouldn't interfere. Master Liang, what do you mean? Don't you want to return the things to us? Zhen Xianyu stared at Liang Danian and clenched his fists. Haha, Zhen Xianyu, I have some bad news for you. We accidentally lost this sword. Since it was lost here, we will compensate you. But for a broken bronze sword, I will compensate you at most 2 taels of silver. If you want it, then take it. I don't have time to chat with you. After saying that, he raised his hand and took out 2 taels of silver and put it in his palm, smiling at Lu Chuan and Zhen Xianyu. Lu Chuan and Zhen Xianyu looked at each other, and they both understood instantly that this guy was obviously going to play rogue and take the bronze sword for himself. Zhen Xianyu immediately became angry, pointing at Liang Danian and scolded, Master Liang, you are too cruel. We handed the things to you for identification, because we trusted you, but you played this trick on us? Do you think we are fools? It was lost. You are kidding me. Liang Danian said confidently. I have made it very clear. It was our swordsmith who lost it accidentally. This kind of thing is purely an accident. Since the accident has happened, I will naturally find a way to solve it. So, this little compensation is my token of my appreciation. Zhan Xianyu raised his hand and knocked the silver in his hand away. Mr. Liang, you are going to act like a rogue today, right? Liang Danian spread his arms and smiled helplessly. Zhan Xianyu, you'd better not slander me casually. Do you have any evidence? If you don't have any evidence, then don't make trouble for me. Although I'm not your opponent, if you dare to attack me, the headquarters of the Divine Weapon Pavilion will never let you go. He smiled proudly, stroked his chin, and looked at Zhan Xianyu and Lu Chuan. If I don't have some confidence, would I dare to stand in front of you like this? It's ridiculous. Lu Chuan looked at Liang Danian and said calmly, Master Liang, do you still remember what I said to you? I said that, if the sword is not returned, I will destroy you. Haha, that kind of nonsense. I will forget it after a sleep. Do you really think I will take it seriously? There are so many people in our Divine Weapon Pavilion, we can crush you to death together. Liang Danian still said very proudly. Zhan Xianyu looked at Lu Chuan. This guy's too arrogant. Mr. Lu, don't worry, I will definitely seek justice for you. Lu Chuan shook his head slightly. No need to bother you. Then, Lu Chuan took off his mask. Master Liang, you really think I can't destroy your Shenbing Pavilion, right? You must have some impression of the Lu family that was wiped out a few days ago. Liang Danian suddenly frowned and stared at Lu Chuan. He felt that Lu Chuan looked familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere. After thinking seriously for a while, he was suddenly shocked and widened his eyes. Wasn't the picture of this person drawn on the bounty that spread throughout Xianshu City a few days ago? Chapter 654 Greed. Liang Danian was frightened by Lu Chuan and took several steps back. He pointed at Lu Chuan and said in a trembling voice, it's you. You are the one who is wanted by the Lu family. You are Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan smiled faintly. You have a good memory. You recognized me so quickly. Did you really destroy the Lu family? I don't believe it. You can't completely destroy the Lu family by yourself. You are just scaring me. He took a few deep breaths and tried to calm himself down as much as possible. A few days ago, the Lu family was killed, which almost shocked the entire Xianshu City. Everyone in Xianshu City knew about it, and Liang Danian naturally heard about such a horrifying incident. He was still wondering who could do such an outrageous thing. Unexpectedly, he saw the murderer today. He still didn't want to believe that Lu Chuan in front of him destroyed the Lu family. You want to scare me, right? I, Liang Danian, have never been scared by anyone in my life. I'm telling you this. Your bronze sword is gone. If you want to find it, go look for it in the trash can. Don't talk nonsense to me, and don't disturb me doing business. He still said righteously. Seeing this, Lu Chuan knew that this guy would not cry until he saw the coffin. In this case, there was no need for him to talk nonsense. Just fight with this bastard directly. It seems that you are determined to die. In this case, I will fulfill your wish. Then, Lu Chuan clenched his fists and walked towards Liang Danian. Seeing this, Liang Danian also shouted very hard, "Where is the guard team? Gather them all. Come on. Do you really think I'm afraid of you?" After he said that, he drew out an exquisite long sword from his waist and pointed the sword directly at Lu Chuan with an overwhelming momentum. Lu Chuan sneered. Still want to resist? You are not my opponent at all. What kind of fighting power can a person who runs a high-end equipment shop have? Lu Chuan was fully capable of destroying a martial arts family, so why should he be afraid of a mere Liang Danian? Without saying a word, Lu Chuan rushed directly towards Liang Danian. Then, his clenched right fist ignited with flames. The blazing heat of the sun god fire instantly hit Liang Danian, and he was shocked and felt something was wrong. Damn it. What kind of flame is this? He quickly retreated. This terrifying high temperature made him feel very dangerous. If he didn't pull away in time, he would be easily killed by a punch. You haven't even reached the strength of the martial emperor realm, and you dare to speak so arrogantly here. Lu Chuan rushed directly towards Liang Danian, and his fierce momentum could not be stopped at all. Seeing this, Liang Danian realized in an instant that, if he didn't run away quickly, he would be dead. Guards, go up. Stop this madman for me. Then, more than a dozen fully armed guards came up to cover Liang Danian's evacuation. However, Lu Chuan used his skill Extreme Shadow Flash, and his figure flashed quickly, directly knocking out the group of guards, and instantly caught up with Liang Danian. A bunch of trash, you can't even stop a person. Liang Danian cursed, and then turned around, and stabbed Lu Chuan with a sword. Lu Chuan dodged sideways, and then punched Liang Danian in the abdomen. Lu Chuan's speed was so fast that Liang Danian couldn't react at all, and he didn't even have time to retreat. Lu Chuan hit Liang Danian's abdomen with a solid punch, and Liang Danian flew backwards, and fell heavily to the ground. With a puff, Liang Danian spurted out a mouthful of blood. Lu Chuan walked slowly towards him. Seeing that the pavilion master was defeated so easily, the guards were so scared that they stood still and didn't want to follow and be cannon fodder. Lu Chuan came to Liang Danian and looked down at the embarrassed pavilion master Liang. Tell me, where is my bronze sword? Liang Danian, lying on the ground, had a hideous face, and the severe pain in his abdomen made him unbearable. He could only open his mouth with difficulty and said weakly, please me, and I will tell you. He originally wanted to take the bronze sword only because of greed, but if he paid the price of his life for it, as a businessman, he would feel that it was not worth it. Merchants are the group that is most likely to become weak, and they can't bear it at all if the pressure is applied. Tell me, where is the bronze sword? I will consider whether to let you go after I get the bronze sword. The bronze sword is on Wanming. Didn't you meet the swordsmith yesterday? It's with him. Lu Chuan nodded slightly and continued to ask, why did you suddenly change your mind yesterday and go to the Zen mansion to help me identify the sword? Do you already know the true appearance of this bronze sword? I do know it, so I chased after it. Zanshai and I also came over. After hearing what Liang Danian said, he suddenly realized, no wonder you suddenly changed your attitude. It turns out that it's not groundless. You came prepared. You know the value of the bronze sword, so you became greedy and wanted to embezzle it, right? Zanshai and I asked. Liang Danian nodded helplessly. Yes, as you said, I want to swallow this sword. It can make you so greedy. I guess this bronze sword is very unusual. Tell me, what is the result of your identification? Lu Chuan looked down at Liang Danian and asked. Liang Danian sighed helplessly. His limbs were weak and his abdomen was in severe pain. He didn't even have the ability to escape. He was completely controlled by Lu Chuan and the others. If he continued to lie or resist, his fate would only be worse. He said helplessly, the result is that this sword is an extremely rare top-grade immortal weapon in Kunlun domain, the soul-breaking sword. Lu Chuan frowned slightly when he heard this. Soul-breaking sword? I have never heard of it. But unfortunately, this sword is sealed and cannot be unsealed for the time being. So, after we get this sword, we are also very helpless. If the seal cannot be unsealed, then this sword is no different from scrap copper and iron. Liang Danian was very powerless. He worked hard to get the treasure, but he couldn't use it, which made him extremely depressed. Lu Chuan just smiled faintly. These guys naturally didn't know that, although the soul-breaking sword was sealed, it was not completely unusable. It can still detect evil spirits and kill evil spirits. This function alone is already quite valuable. Lu Chuan was curious, if the soul-breaking sword was completely unsealed, how powerful would its real effect be? Go and take back the soul-breaking sword. I'll watch it here. Lu Chuan looked at Zanshai and Ayu and said. Zanshai and Ayu nodded slightly and ran towards the divine weapon pavilion. Lu Chuan looked down at Liang Danian and said coldly, do you think I will spare you? Dare to steal my things, you are looking for death. Liang Danian suddenly went crazy and shouted loudly, asshole, I have cooperated with you very well, why do you go back on your word? You shouldn't have been greedy at the beginning. Now, it's time to pay the price for it. Chapter 655, Method of Removing. Liang Danian lay on the ground, looking at Lu Chuan with horror. He kept backing away, trying to keep himself away from Lu Chuan as much as possible. You bastard, you said you would let me go. Lu Chuan sneered. Dream on, you dare to covet my things, and you still want me to let you go? You're dead today. Ah. Mr. Liu, if you let me go, all the weapons in this divine weapon pavilion are at your disposal. Take whichever you want. He panicked and didn't care to accuse Lu Chuan of breaking his promise, just wanting to do everything he could to save his life first. However, Lu Chuan shook his head slightly and said disdainfully, "You just said that the sword in my hand is a fairy weapon from Kunlun domain. I already have a fairy weapon, so why do I need your scraps? And if you die, I can take whatever I want after I go in, right?" Hearing this, Liang Danian fell into despair. His expression was dull, his face was as hen, and his whole body was frozen. "Kill this guy, don't waste too much time with him." Zhan Xianyu walked over and said, "Zhan Xianyu, do you Zhan family really dare to offend our Shenbing pavilion? You actually dare to help the tyrant?" Liang Danian's weak threat made Zhan Xianyu feel ridiculous. The next moment, Lu Chuan grabbed Liang Danian's neck and punched him in the face. A clean punch easily took Liang Danian's life. Lu Chuan stood up again, looked at Zhan Xianyu, and said, "Let's go in and find that Wanning." The two walked towards the door of the pavilion. As soon as they arrived at the door, they saw Wanning coming out. He walked out trembling, his body seemed to be shaking, and his eyes looking at Lu Chuan were full of timidity. He did not hesitate, and directly presented the bronze sword with both hands. "Mr. Liu, this is your sword. I will return it to you intact," he said very respectfully, as if he was afraid that Lu Chuan would do something to him. Lu Chuan took the soul-breaking sword and said in a much softer tone, "I know you are just an employee here. You can't make decisions on many things, and you can't change anything. So, I killed your pavilion master, but I won't do anything to you. Although I'm merciless, I'm not indiscriminate, and will kill anyone I see." Hearing this, Wanning breathed a sigh of relief, and the tension in his body eased a lot. "Thank you for not killing me," he hurriedly said respectfully. After Lu Chuan took the scabbard, he pulled out the soul-breaking sword and looked at it. There was still a layer of bronze covering it, and the sword body underneath could not be seen. Lu Chuan felt a little helpless. It seemed that the divine weapon pavilion had not found a way to unseal it. Lu Chuan looked at Wanning and asked, "How did you recognize this sword?" Wanning hurriedly said respectfully, "It's like this. Although I'm a 5th grade swordsmith, my innate talent is extremely poor. It was only through my hard work that I was promoted to a 5th grade swordsmith step by step. In the process, I read a lot of ancient books and learned a vast amount of knowledge so that I could be on par with those gifted people. So, I just saw the hilt of this sword and immediately recognized it. I went back and looked through the ancient books and immediately found information about the soul-breaking sword. On the accompanying drawing, the hilt is exactly the same as the bronze sword in your hand. So, I concluded that your bronze sword is the soul-breaking sword, the immortal weapon of Kunlun domain, but this seal is too special. I'm incompetent and have not found a way to break it for the time being." At this time, Zhan Xianyu walked over, looked at Wanning, and asked, "Then let me ask you, what is the function of this soul-breaking sword?" The soul-breaking sword, as the name suggests, is to cut off the soul. This kind of sword can cause substantial damage to a person's soul. The description of this in the ancient books is very simple and does not go into detail. If you want to find out the characteristics of this sword, you may have to find a way to remove the seal or find the owner of the sword. I'm afraid these 2 points are not easy to do. Zhan Xianyu looked at Lu Chuan and frowned immediately. It seems that this matter is not easy to deal with. Can you really not remove the seal? Lu Chuan looked at Wanning and asked again. Wanning nodded quickly. "Yes, I really can't remove the seal. I have made a lot of efforts and found many ways. It's really incompetent, and I haven't reached this level yet. Since you are a 5th grade swordsmith and you can't remove the seal, what level of forger has this ability?" 5th grade is just the grade division of our divine weapon pavilion. If you go to the headquarters of the divine weapon pavilion and find an 8th grade or 9th grade forger, there may be a way to remove the seal. I can't guarantee it. I can only ask you to try it yourself. Lu Chuan nodded helplessly. "Okay, please tell me so much." It seems that it is still difficult to bring out the true function of this sword. Lu Chuan put away the soul-breaking sword. However, even if it is not unsealed, its current ability is still very powerful. At least, it is much stronger than ordinary magic weapons. Zanshianayu looked at Lu Chuan and asked curiously, even if this soul-breaking sword is sealed, does it still have special functions? Lu Chuan smiled faintly. Have you forgotten how your father's illness was cured? You cured it with fire. Before that, I helped your father get rid of the evil spirits in his body. At that time, I used this sword. Hearing this, Zanshianayu suddenly realized. I understand, so that's the case. Although the soul-breaking sword is sealed, it still has an effect on special evil spirits. Even if it's just this little bit, it's enough to make this sword a top grade 1 in a million. Zanshianayu sighed. After all, in his knowledge, magic weapons that can kill evil spirits are really rare. Lu Chuan looked at Wanning and said, you go back and rest. I'm going home. Wanning hurriedly said goodbye to Lu Chuan and said, welcome to visit the Divine Weapon Pavilion next time. I will definitely welcome you in person. Lu Chuan and Zanshianayu walked out of the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Liang Danian, the branch pavilion master, was killed by Lu Chuan. If this matter spread to the Divine Weapon Pavilion, it would inevitably cause some hatred. It was already late at night when they returned to the Zan family's house. Although the seal of the soul-breaking sword could not be lifted this time, at least a direction was pointed out. After returning to the house, Gu Xiaorao hurried out to greet Lu Chuan. When she saw Lu Chuan coming back with a sword, she naturally knew what was going on. She just smiled faintly beside Lu Chuan, and the two entered the yard together. Late at night, Lu Chuan fell asleep in a room alone. When he went to bed, he habitually opened the branches of the sacred tree and began to release spiritual energy. This can greatly improve the quality of sleep, and he can also absorb spiritual energy while sleeping. The spiritual energy of the branches of the sacred tree is as vast as the sea, and Lu Chuan never worries about running out of spiritual energy. At the same time, Zhao Shengyang had also arrived in Huacheng and began looking for his uncle. Chapter 656 Death at Peach Blossom Ridge. In the early morning, the sun had just appeared, and the light it shone awakened all things on earth. Taking advantage of the faint morning light, Zhao Shengyang hurriedly rode out of Huacheng and headed for Fanhua Valley. He rode fast all night, and when he arrived at Huacheng, it was already dawn. He didn't stay for too long, and immediately started to climb the mountain, to look for the traces of his uncle Huang Yuking. On the way up the mountain, Zhao Shengyang felt exhausted. He was sweating and panting after walking a few steps. Soon, he came to Tao Yiling. There were peach trees all over the mountains. Among the intricate tree trunks, his visibility was very low. If you want to find someone in this peach forest, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. He began to look around while shouting Huang Yuking's name loudly. However, he searched for almost a whole morning, but couldn't find Huang Yuking. He leaned against a peach tree and wiped the sweat from his forehead. That bastard must be lying to me. It's a waste of time. He cursed secretly. Although he thought he was cheated, he didn't want to give up early and continued to look around. He kept looking for it until the afternoon, but he couldn't see any people, so he wanted to give up. He stood there and sighed helplessly. I was definitely cheated. That bastard dared to play tricks on our Cheyenne Wu sect. When I go back, I will never let that bastard go, he said angrily, feeling resentful. At this moment, he vaguely saw that the soil under his feet seemed to be a little wrong. The soil here was obviously darker, obviously different from the surrounding ones. He frowned and began to get nervous. The soil here showed signs of being turned over. It is very likely that a pit has been dug here. He knelt on the ground and frantically dug the soil with his hands. Soon, he touched a piece of clothing. He pulled hard and tore out a piece of rag. He held the rag in both hands, stared with wide eyes, and looked at it in disbelief. He remembered the pattern of this rag in his heart. This was the clothes of his uncle Huang Yuking. His hands were shaking, and he couldn't believe this fact. The person buried in the soil was none other than Huang Yuking, the third elder of his Cheyenne Wu sect. He was in a trance, and then he was instantly engulfed by anger. I'm going to kill you. Bastard. You dared to kill the elder of our Cheyenne Wu sect? I will never forgive you. Don't think that we can't do anything to you, just because you hide in the Zan family. Ah. He roared, frantically dug up the soil, and dug out Huang Yuking's body. He looked at the body, with nowhere to vent his anger, and then drew out his sword, and chopped down the surrounding peach trees like crazy. The trees fell one after another, and every time he swung his sword, he would imagine the target as Lu Chuan's figure. After chopping down hundreds of peach trees in a row, he was out of breath, and after feeling exhausted, he sighed helplessly. Then, he buried Huan Yuking again, cut the wood into a tombstone, and inserted it on the grave. With anger, he began to ride on his horse, and rushed back to Xianshu City. He began to worry, fearing that Lu Chuan would take advantage of this time to escape, so he rushed back very quickly, with almost no time to rest. In Xianshu City, after Lu Chuan got up, he continued to practice in the yard. Zhan Xianyu walked quickly into the yard, and walked towards Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan, there is a banquet tonight, do you want to go? Zhan Xianyu walked over and asked. What banquet? Today is the birthday of the city lord's daughter. Tonight is her birthday dinner. All the dignitaries in the city will attend. Our Zhan family is no exception. We have received an invitation. Generally speaking, if we have nothing to do, we will definitely attend this kind of banquet. On such occasions, we can meet many powerful people, which is great for expanding our network. Lu Chuan shook his head slightly. You guys go. I won't go. First, I have a bounty on my head. Second, I really don't need to expand my network. I can't use the connections in Xianshu City. Hearing this, Zhan Xianyu nodded helplessly. Okay, you are right. Then I will go there in the evening. By the way, people from Xian Wumen will also attend. At that time, I might run into Gilly again. Let's meet him, if we meet him. Lu Chuan said disapprovingly. You didn't forget, did you? If we count the time, Zhao Shengyang should be back. If he happens to come back tonight, wouldn't we just run into him? Lu Chuan still didn't care. Maybe he didn't find anything. But what if he found out? Gulai will definitely not let me go. Then we'll talk about it later. Zhan Xianyu nodded helplessly. I'm no match for Gulai. If he wants to deal with me, you can only do it. Don't worry, if that old man has any ideas about me, I will definitely not let him go. Okay, then I won't bother you. Zhan Xianyu turned around and left the yard. At this time, Gu Xiaorao and Gu Xiaosang came over together. Lu Chuan, did Zhan Xianyu come to you just now to ask for something? Gu Xiaorao asked. The city lord's daughter is celebrating her birthday tonight, and he asked me if I would go. Aren't you going? Gu Xiaosang looked at Lu Chuan curiously. Of course, why would I go to join in the fun? I'm already eye-catching enough in this city. Gu Xiaosang was very curious. How could there be someone in this world who doesn't like to join in the fun? If you don't go, then I'll go. I'll go find Zhan Xianyu right now. Gu Xiaosang said, and was about to walk out of the yard. Lu Chuan quickly stopped her. Hey, why are you going to join in the fun? If you encounter any danger, who can save you? Gu Xiaosang tilted her head and thought for a while. It's just a birthday dinner. What danger can there be? Zhao Shengyang may be back in the evening. If he knows that Huang Yuking is dead, that old man Gulai will definitely make trouble for me. By then, you may be affected. Gu Xiaorao also advised, it's better to stay here and don't join in the fun. If something happens, we can't save you. Gu Xiaosang said with some regret. The birthday party of the city lord's daughter will definitely be grand and lively. It would be a loss if we don't go to see it. Brother Lu Chuan, just let me go. I can be your spy. If I see Zhao Shengyang, I will immediately leave the party and come back to report to you. She pulled Lu Chuan's arm and pleaded softly. Lu Chuan was helpless and could only nod. Then go ahead. If the situation is not right, come back quickly. Okay, I'll go find Uncle Xianyu and ask him to take me there. After saying that, she ran out of the yard excitedly. Seeing this, Gu Xiaorao sighed helplessly. I hope she doesn't cause any trouble. Don't you want to go with me? If I go with you, wouldn't I leave you alone to guard the yard? I'd better accompany you. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 657 City Lord Dinner. At night, Zhan Xianyu stood at the gate in a gorgeous suit. Zhan Xianheng followed him out after finishing his family affairs. Zhan Xianheng saw Gu Xiaosang beside Zhan Xianyu and asked, "Why are you going to attend someone else's banquet? Why bring her? She is Mr. Lu's friend after all. Isn't it normal for me to give her face?" Gu Xiaosang smiled proudly and followed Zhan Xianyu closely. "Okay, when you get there, don't talk nonsense. Those who attend the banquet are all big shots." Zhan Xianheng looked at Gu Xiaosang and said, "It's not like I haven't seen big shots before. No matter how big a person in Xianshu City is, can he be bigger than my brother Lu Chuan?" Gu Xiaosang's words choked Zhan Xianheng directly, leaving him unable to refute. There is really nothing wrong with this statement. Looking at the entire Xianshu City, there are really few people with stronger hard power than Lu Chuan. However, this does not mean that Lu Chuan is invincible in Xianshu City. If a family were to use all its strength to deal with Lu Chuan, he would not be able to bear it. A group of 3 people, accompanied by several Zhan family guards, began to move towards the city lord's mansion. Before reaching the gate of the city lord's mansion, they saw several luxurious carriages heading towards the gate of the city lord's mansion. Among them, the ZHU family's carriage was the most obvious. The entire carriage was made of mahogany, and the curtains on both sides of the cabin were hung with jewels, and the frame was inlaid with gold edges. After arriving at the city lord's mansion, ZHU King Cheng got off the carriage and glanced at the other carriages around him. He immediately showed a smug smile. Among all the carriages, his was the most luxurious. After getting off the car, everyone greeted each other politely, a harmonious and beautiful scene. But privately, fighting between these people has never been uncommon. They just don't make trouble here, to give the city lord a face. Then, everyone entered the city lord's mansion one after another. When crossing the gate, Zhan Xianyu vaguely saw Gulai's figure in the crowd. However, Zhao Shengyang was not seen beside him, nor was he seen to be angry. It seemed that he did not know about Huang Yuking's death for the time being. Everyone entered the city lord's mansion. In the spacious front yard, they could see the pond and rocks, and there was also an ancient style pavilion next to it. The overall style was grand and simple. When the city lord saw everyone coming in, he hurried to greet them. "Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy that you can give me, Yang, a face. The dinner is about to start tonight. Please take a seat. Don't be polite. It's like being at home," he said with a smile. His bright smile made the overall atmosphere much more harmonious. Everyone took their seats one after another, and then, one after another delicious food was served. Then, on a stage built in advance in front, the dancers invited by City Lord Yang in advance were performing hard, and the musicians next to them played melodious tunes. Everyone enjoyed the dance, while eating delicious food. It can be said that they enjoyed it. The table full of delicious food made Gu Xiaosang salivate. The food of the Zhen family was simply not as good as the luxurious meal here. She picked up the chopsticks and started eating without hesitation. Zhan Xianyu kept his eyes on Gulai not far away. After not seeing Zhao Shengyang for a long time, he gradually felt relieved. "Third brother, I see you are worried." Zhan Xianheng looked at Zhan Xianyu curiously. "Did you see Gulai over there?" Zhan Xianheng nodded slightly. "Of course I saw him. He is the second elder of Xianwu sect. How many people in the whole Xianshu city don't know him? Then do you know the third elder of their Xianwu sect? I have heard of him a little bit. He is quite powerful and also top notch. He is dead." Zhan Xianheng suddenly widened his eyes. "Who did you say died?" "Huang Yuking. He died a long time ago." "What? Huang Yuking is dead? Who killed him? When did it happen?" Zhan Xianheng was a little panicked. Wouldn't the death of such a person alarm the Xianwu sect? The one who was killed by Lu Chuan is in Huacheng. Zhan Xianheng sighed helplessly. "Lu Chuan, he has offended a lot of people. It's not that he offended Xianwu first, but Xianwu took a fancy to the treasures on him and took the lead in fighting for them. So, Lu Chuan has quite a lot of good things on him." Zhan Xianyu nodded slightly. "I guess so. He does have a lot of good things, but this is also the source of his strong strength. This Gulai doesn't know the news of Huang Yuking's death yet, so he hasn't taken action against Lu Chuan yet. If he knew, I'm afraid there would be a big battle." Zhan Xianheng suddenly frowned, touched his chin, and fell into deep thought. This problem seems to be very serious. Lu Chuan has offended the Lu family, the Lin family, and the Xianwu Gate. Aren't there people in Xianxu City who are his enemies? Of course there are. Our Zhen family. Zhan Xianhang smiled bitterly. Our Zhen family. Forget it. Who made him our father's savior? Don't think about it. While everyone was tasting the food, the daughter of City Lord Yang came out. The moment she came out, the whole audience was talking about it. What they said was nothing more than praising how beautiful and talented the City Lord's daughter was, although most of what they said was not true or sincere. Thank you all for coming to support me today. I hope you can eat and drink well, the City Lord's daughter said softly. Although she looked ordinary, it did not prevent the group of people below from praising her. When the mansion was bustling, at the door, a figure still came quietly. Zhao Shengyang rushed back at full speed. He tied the horse to a pillar beside him. At this moment, he had not slept for a day and a night, and he was exhausted physically and mentally after running back and forth. But the anger deep in his heart made him ignore these physical burdens. He walked towards the gate. The guard stopped him and asked, "Do you have an invitation? Get out of my way. I have something important to report. If you delay the opportunity, can you bear the responsibility? What big thing can be as big as the birthday of the City Lord's daughter?" The guard's attitude was also very tough. Zhao Shengyang said coldly, "What I want to report is about Lu Chuan. Isn't this a big deal? Have you forgotten why the Lu mansion was destroyed?" The two guards looked at each other and still didn't intend to let him in. Zhao Shengyang had no choice but to take out the disciple token of Xian Wuman. "I'm Gulai's direct disciple. Don't I have the right to go in?" Seeing this, the two guards let him in. "Why didn't you take this out earlier?" After the guards let him in, Zhao Shengyang walked quickly into the City Lord's mansion. He was furious and walked towards the crowd. "Master, I have something important to report to you," Zhao Shengyang shouted loudly, walking towards Gulai. Everyone in the audience was attracted by this voice, and they all turned their heads to look over. Hearing this, Gulai also hurriedly looked at Zhao Shengyang and asked, "Why are you here? Did you find out the result in Huacheng?" "Master, it's true that my uncle is in Taoyuling, but when I found him, he had been killed and buried in the ground." Chapter 658, Burning with Fury. Zhao Shengyang came to Gulai in a very dejected manner. Gulai looked at Zhao Shengyang in front of him and saw that his face was full of fatigue, dark circles under his eyes, and he looked listless. Although he looked very tired, the anger contained in his eyes could not be concealed at all. "Are you serious? Did you really find the body of your uncle in Taoyuling?" Gulai asked in a deep voice. This result made him extremely angry. He stared at Zhao Shengyang with his eyes wide open. Zhao Shengyang nodded very heavily. "Yes, master, everything I said is true. I saw the body of my uncle with my own eyes. I dug a piece of his clothes out of the soil. He definitely died in Taoyuling. I can guarantee it," he said solemnly. Then, Gulai stood up suddenly and turned his head to look at Zhen Xianyu not far away. At this time, the City Lord Yang Ji stood up. He looked at Gulai and asked hurriedly, "Elder Gu, is there any problem?" Gulai looked at Yang Ji and said coldly, "City Lord Yang, this is none of your business. The people I'm looking for are the people from the Zhen family." Yang Ji hurried over. Tonight was his precious daughter's birthday party, and he didn't want to see the party ruined. "If there is any problem, we can go down and talk slowly and solve it slowly. It's best not to do it here. After all, so many people are watching, don't you think?" Yang Ji smiled softly, hoping that Gulai would give him this face. However, Gulai was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. The elders of his own sect were all killed. How could he stay calm in such a major event? He absolutely couldn't hold back his anger all night for the City Lord's daughter's dinner. "City Lord Yang, do you know what I just learned? Are you trying to persuade me to be magnanimous? I'm telling you the truth. Today's banquet ends here. Let the people of the Zhen family roll over here. If you don't give me an explanation, I will attack them." Gulai shouted angrily, and immediately, everyone in the audience became nervous. They didn't understand why the Xianwu sect suddenly had a conflict with the Zhen family. And Gulai didn't even give the City Lord face and insisted on ruining the banquet. City Lord Yang Ji's face was very ugly at this moment. Being rejected in public was simply the most embarrassing time since he became the City Lord. He looked at Gulai and persuaded him again. Elder Gu, you are the second elder of the Cheyenne Wu sect. It's true that I respect you very much, but the premise is that you must also respect me enough. Do you take me seriously when you do this? Yang Ji said coldly, as if questioning Gulai. City Lord Yang, do you have a brother? If you find out that your brother is dead and the murderer is sitting here, how would you feel? Yang Ji was stunned by Gulai's question. Yang Ji pondered for a moment and shook his head slightly. Of course I will be very angry. Of course, blood debts must be paid with blood. There is no problem with that. That's right. It seems that you can understand me. Now, I tell you that the third elder of our Cheyenne Wu sect was murdered, and the murderer has a close relationship with the Zhen family. Gulai raised his hand and pointed to Zhen Qianheng and Zhen Qianyu who were sitting at the table in the distance. Yang Ji looked over and saw Zhen Qianyu and Zhen Qianheng sitting there steadily without any statement. What is going on? Yang Ji asked hurriedly. Gulai said coldly, the murderer is right here, and you want me to sit here and eat in peace. Can I eat? Without saying a word, he walked towards Zhen Qianheng and Zhen Qianyu. At this time, Zhen Qianyu stood up, looked at Gulai, and said calmly, Elder Gu, don't talk nonsense without evidence. The death of your sect elder has nothing to do with our Zhen family. Gulai shouted angrily, of course it has nothing to do with your Zhen family, but it has something to do with the person you are protecting. Do you think I don't know? It's that masked man. He is the murderer who killed Huang Yuking. I will never forgive you. If you don't hand that person over, I will never forgive your Zhen family. At this time, Zhen Qianheng also stood up and looked at Gulai, his face calm and steady, without a trace of ripples. Elder Gu, if you want to find an enemy, go find it at will. Don't cause trouble for our Zhen family. Humph, don't pretend to be innocent here. I will never get rid of you. Gulai scolded. The quarrel between the two sides caused everyone around to talk. They never expected that the third elder of Cheyenne Wu sect would die. And he died in Huacheng, which was beyond the expectations of all of them. Zhao Shengyang also walked forward a few steps and shouted to the two brothers of the Zhen family, hand over that man. We cannot pursue the trouble of your Zhen family. If you insist on protecting that guy, don't blame us for using force. Zhan Qianheng said coldly, are you threatening me? Who do you think you are? You are not qualified to talk to me like this. Do you really think that our Zhen family is afraid of your Cheyenne Wu sect? If you have the ability, come and fight. When the time comes, both sides will be injured. Let's see who is happy. Gulai took a deep breath. He knew that if the Cheyenne Wu sect and the Zhen family were to fight thoroughly, it would be unrealistic. The result must be that both sides will be injured, and then other forces will come to share the spoils. But after all, the third elder was killed. If he didn't let this breath out, he would be very upset. At this time, Yang Ji stood up. He still hoped that this was just a small episode and that the birthday party could continue normally. In the distance, the daughter of the city lord was looking at this side with a sad face. If her birthday party was ruined, she would probably be very upset with Yang Ji. Yang Ji stood between the two of them, looked at Zhen Qianheng, and said, let me do justice. The situation is very clear. The elder of Cheyenne Wu sect was killed, and the murderer is in your Zhen family mansion. Is this true or false? Zhan Qianheng remained silent and did not choose to respond. Gulai then said, of course it is true. The man with the veil is the bastard who killed our third elder. If you don't hand over that kid, I will never forgive your Zhen family. From now on, our Cheyenne Wu sect and your Zhen family will be mortal enemies. Yang Ji saw that Gulai had a hot temper and his face was full of worry. Why not do this? Since it is a conflict between the two of you, then pick you two out and find a suitable time to fight to decide the winner. It does not involve the Zhen family and Cheyenne Wu sect and minimize the impact as much as possible. How about it? Yang Ji's words were exactly what Gulai wanted. Okay, I have no objection. The key is, can the Zhen family hand over the person? Yang Ji quickly looked at Zhen Qianheng and asked, Qianheng, this matter must have a result. This duel is already the best solution. You don't really want to become a complete enemy of Cheyenne Wu sect, do you? Chapter 659, Life and Death Duel. Zhan Qianheng and Zhen Qianyu stood there, both of them lost in thought. Obviously, they were not qualified to help Lu Chuan take on this duel. If Lu Chuan had no intention of fighting Gulai, then they were making the decision without authorization. Seeing the two of them in such a dilemma, Gulai became even more angry. What do you two mean? Can't you make a decision? Who is that guy? How dare he be so arrogant? Gulai roared. Zhao Shengyang next to him sneered. Master, I'm afraid they don't have the courage to accept this duel. They are afraid of losing. At this time, Gu Xiaosang stood up and scolded. Who is afraid of losing? Don't slander us. Do you think we are afraid of your master? Ridiculous. Zhao Shengyang continued to smile and said, if you are not afraid, then come out and fight openly. What's the problem? If you are afraid of death, go back and pack your luggage overnight, and then run away in a panic. If you are lucky, and we can't catch him, it's his luck. Gu Xiaosang clenched his fists angrily. You should run away in a panic. It's just a duel. Just accept it. Who's afraid of you? Gu Xiaosang shouted loudly. Hearing this, Zhao Shengyang showed a smug smile. Master, it seems that the other party has accepted this duel. Gulai sneered and nodded slightly. City Lord Yang, you come to be a witness. What time and place? You be the referee and witness the victory or defeat. Hearing this, Yang Ji nodded slightly. No problem. Why not do it tomorrow? If you are all free, come to our city lord's mansion tomorrow. I will set up the arena, and I will be the referee myself. How about it? Gulai smiled faintly. I will naturally give the city lord's face, but it is hard to say whether that guy will give face or not. Yang Ji looked at Gu Xiaosang and asked, you just stood up and agreed to the duel on behalf of that person. There should be some relationship between you and that person. In this case, you can take the message back. If he comes to challenge, I will still regard him as a man. Gu Xiaosang said proudly. Of course he dares. Tomorrow, right? Wait, let's see how he will deal with you tomorrow. Gulai smiled proudly. Then I'm looking forward to it. As he spoke, he gritted his teeth and clenched his fists, unable to contain his anger. Seeing this, Yang Ji immediately smiled with relief. Since the problem has been solved for the time being, let's all go back to our seats and continue to enjoy dinner. Everyone, forget what happened just now. Continue to eat, drink and have fun. Don't take it too seriously. Gulai suppressed his anger and turned back to his seat. Zhao Shengyang came to Gulai's side, pulled a chair and sat down. Master, what if that guy doesn't dare to come tomorrow? If that bastard just runs away, where can we find him? Gulai drank a glass of wine. No matter what, I'm going to take this bastard's life. If he doesn't die, I will have no face to return to Cheyenne Wu sect, and I will not be able to explain to the leader. No matter what, I must kill that guy tomorrow. If he doesn't dare to come, I will go to the Zhen family to ask for an explanation. Then, Gulai looked at Zhao Shengyang and asked, by the way, what was Elder Huang's goal when he went to Huacheng? It was to take back the branches. Have you forgotten? Of course I know this, but from whose hands are they to be taken back? Zhao Shengyang thought for a moment, then said, it seems that man is called Lu Chuan. Gulai frowned when he heard this and fell into deep thought. Lu Chuan. We just heard of this name not long ago. Wasn't he wanted by the Lu family? Could it be that the bastard who deceived me is Lu Chuan himself? He killed Elder Huang. Zhao Shengyang suddenly realized. Master, now that you mention it, it seems that this is really possible. That bastard is definitely Lu Chuan. Master, what should I do? Will this guy be difficult to deal with? He's just a target kid. I have my own way to deal with him. Don't make this public. When I catch that kid, I can not only get back the branches of the sacred tree, but also hand him over to the Lu family. It's completely killing two birds with one stone. He showed a smug smile. If he could defeat Lu Chuan, the loss caused to Cheyenne Woman by Huang Yuking's death could be completely compensated. The dinner went on normally again. Although the atmosphere became lively and harmonious again, if you listen carefully, you will hear that what they are talking about is all about the fast just now. Zhan Xianyu looked at Gu Xiaosang and asked, why did you agree to it for Lu Chuan without permission? What if he doesn't want to come? How could he not come? He is not afraid of this Gulai. Gu Xiaosang said very proudly. She trusted Lu Chuan's ability very much, so she agreed to it on behalf of Lu Chuan so decisively. Zanshin Heng sighed helplessly. Hey, the troubles encountered by our Zan family are really getting more and more. Gu Xiaosang retorted. Do you only see troubles? Brother Lu Chuan helped your father come back to life. Zanshin Heng nodded slightly. Yes, for this, I will definitely help Lu Chuan a lot. You don't have to agree to a duel for him. Just let Gulai go. I don't believe he really dares to attack our Zan family. Gu Xiaosang shrugged helplessly. I have already agreed. Can I regret it? In this case, then believe Lu Chuan. The dinner ended soon. The crowd dispersed, and groups of people left one after another. The things they talked about were basically the same. All about the murder of the 3 elders of Xian Wu sect. Zanshin Heng and Zanshin I returned to the Zan family together. After Gu Xiaosang returned to the mansion, he hurried to find Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan was eating dinner in the courtyard. When he saw Gu Xiaosang running in, he asked, "Why are you running so fast?" Gu Xiaosang ran to Lu Chuan, panting. She sat on a stone chair and rested for a long time before she stood up again and walked towards Lu Chuan. Did you know that Zhao Shengyang came at the dinner? He found the body fragments and knew that Huang Yuking died there. After Gulai knew about it, he directly identified you as the murderer and threatened to cause trouble for the Zan family. Lu Chuan nodded slightly. Go on. Then, their Xian Wu sect will definitely not fight with the Zan family completely. After all, the gap in strength between them is not that big. If Xian Wu sect wants to bite off the Zan family, it will definitely suffer a heavy blow. So, the final result is that you two arrange a duel to resolve this conflict. Lu Chuan frowned slightly. Duel? Me and that Gulai? Yes, he wants to fight you. You won't be weak to him, right? Gu Xiaosang looked at Lu Chuan with some concern. Lu Chuan immediately retorted, how is it possible? You should have agreed, right? Gu Xiaosang smiled awkwardly. Of course I agreed. If you were there, you should have agreed too, right? She looked at Lu Chuan nervously, fearing that Lu Chuan would be angry. Chapter 660, The Focus of the City. Lu Chuan looked at Gu Xiaosang, smiled faintly, and said, just agree to it. If I were there, I would definitely agree to it. Could it be that Gulai wants to fight with me, and I can't avoid it? Since you have agreed, then prepare to fight. Gu Xiaorao looked at Lu Chuan with some concern. I heard that Gulai is very strong. Most people are no match for him. There are not many people in the whole Xianshu city who can beat him. And he, like you, has a strong control over fire. Xianshu city used to have many young people who didn't know how to live or die. They thought they had the strength of middle-level martial king, so they dared to challenge Gulai, but they were all severely burned. Lu Chuan looked at Gu Xiaorao and asked curiously, how do you know so much? I heard that the Zan family is very well informed. I just asked a servant of the Zan family. Lu Chuan nodded slightly. It seems that this guy is indeed a bit tricky, but it's not like I haven't killed opponents who are more tricky than him. Besides, he is also a fire controller. This is not his advantage, but his disadvantage. Lu Chuan said confidently. When will the fight start tomorrow? Gu Xiaosang said quickly. At 3 PM, in the city lord's mansion. The city lord will personally be a witness and watch you two fight one-on-one. There may be other people from Xianshu city. Lu Chuan stroked his chin, pondered for a moment, and said, if I go there to fight one-on-one, I must take off my mask. Everyone in Xianshu city will know that I'm Lu Chuan, who killed people from Xian Wu sect and fought with Gulai. In the future, I can't hide in the Zan family anymore. If the reinforcement from the Lu family come, I can only fight head on. Lu Chuan stood up and walked towards the room. Gulai, you and your fellow 3 elders will have the same fate. Anyone who dares to stop me will die. The next morning, the whole city got up and rushed to the streets and squeezed into various breakfast shops. The most talked about topic among them was Gulai's duel today. Almost everyone in the city knew the news, and many people were looking forward to seeing it with their own eyes. After all, there are so many things to learn from the battle between the strong. Many dignitaries have already sold a favor to the city lord. When the time comes, they can go to the city lord's mansion to enjoy a hearty battle. Of course, their target has always been Gulai. They just want to see Gulai's battle scene. Many of them have never seen Gulai's fighting posture with their own eyes and have only heard about it. Now that the opportunity is in front of them, they will naturally not let it go. As for Gulai's opponent, they naturally don't care. How can a completely unknown character become the focus of people's attention? However, they also know that Gulai's opponent will not be simple. After all, he is the one who killed Huang Yuking, and is also a top strong man. Before noon, many people gathered at the gate of the city lord's mansion, and many people were looking forward to Gulai's arrival. It was not until 2 o'clock in the afternoon that Gulai's figure slowly appeared on the street. Zhao Shengyang stood in front to lead the way. After a night's rest, his condition was obviously much better. "Master, please come this way." Gulai walked slowly, his face calm, as if he was confident about this duel. Soon, they arrived at the city gate. The people gathered around, all focused their eyes on Gulai. Gulai was like a star, the focus of everyone's attention. "Is that bastard here?" Gulai looked at Zhao Shengyang and asked. Zhao Shengyang looked at everyone and shouted, "Have you seen the opponent who came to participate in the duel?" "No. He hasn't come yet, right?" "He won't come." "It shouldn't be, he has agreed to it. If he doesn't come, wouldn't it be a slap in the face of the city lord?" "It's hard to say. After all, that guy is facing Gulai from Cheyenne Woman. It's understandable that he escaped from the battle. Hey, I still want to enjoy this grand duel. Don't let my hopes down. Wait a little longer. It's almost 3 o'clock. If that guy hasn't arrived yet, I think we can disperse." After everyone waited for a long time, Lu Chuan's figure slowly walked out. Gu Xiaosang took the lead and ran all the way to the gate of the city lord's mansion. When she saw Gulai waiting here early, she smiled triumphantly. "Wow, I didn't expect you guys to have the courage to come over for a duel." Zhao Shengyang heard this and clenched his fists angrily. "What did you say? You should be the ones who don't have the courage." Gu Xiaosang continued, "Don't be in a hurry to shout. You will cry when the fight starts." "Bullshit. My master is invincible in the world. Why would he be afraid of you bunch of trash?" Zhao Shengyang shouted angrily. Gulai sighed helplessly. "Disciple, don't bother with this person. It's a waste of energy." Zhao Shengyang took a deep breath and returned to Gulai's figure. Then, Lu Chuan's figure slowly walked over. This time, he was not wearing a veil. Today he will let the people of Xianshu City know who destroyed the Lu mansion and who killed Huang Yuking. And, in whose hands will Gulai die? Lu Chuan walked over slowly. The passers-by who saw Lu Chuan's face all showed surprised expressions and looked at Lu Chuan in disbelief. That's right, as soon as Lu Chuan appeared, he was recognized by everyone here. After all, the bounty issued by the Lu family was still vivid in their minds. How could they forget it so quickly? When Gulai saw Lu Chuan coming, his brows tightened and his heart sank. Sure enough, as he guessed, the murderer was Lu Chuan. "Lu Chuan, it's you. It's you. The branch of the sacred tree is on you. You killed Elder Huang. You deserve to die. If you died earlier, our Cheyenne Wu sect would have been among the top sects in Kunlun domain. Today, I will kill you. Bastard." He shouted angrily, and the anger in his heart reached its peak. Everyone was immediately excited. They originally thought that this was a crushing game, and it was already good for them to appreciate Gulai's battle scenes. But what they didn't expect was that Gulai's opponent was actually Lu Chuan himself. This man who was offered a high reward by the Lu family also killed the third elder of Cheyenne Wu sect. This guy's definitely a well-deserved strong man. For a moment, the spectators looked at the two of them, and their hearts suddenly became extremely excited. Lu Chuan looked at Gulai and showed a faint smile. "Today, I will send you to see the third elder and let you go down to accompany him well. You bastard, dare to talk to me like this. I will never forgive you. Today, I will use your blood to worship my junior brother. Get into the city lord's mansion and see how I deal with you." He snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves, and walked towards the city lord's mansion. Chapter 661 The duel begins. Gulai could not wait to walk into the city lord's mansion. He only wanted to avenge his junior brother Huang Yuking as soon as possible, not only for Huang Yuking's revenge, but also to save the face of Cheyenne Wu sect. If the third elder of the sect was killed, and he remained indifferent, then people in the future would say that the people in Cheyenne Wu sect were all a bunch of cowards. Gulai walked into the city lord's mansion and saw that the competition platform had been set up in the middle of the yard. The battle between him and Lu Chuan could start at any time. Even the audience next to him had all arrived. The person who was most looking forward to this duel was naturally Zhu Qingcheng. He really wanted to see what Lu Chuan's true strength was. He wanted to win over Lu Chuan at the beginning, but unfortunately he was a step behind and let the Zhen family take advantage of it. But after the reward was issued, he felt better. In his eyes, Lu Chuan was both a talented person and a hidden danger. If he offended the Lu family in order to make friends with Lu Chuan, it would definitely be more trouble than gain. In order to get this opportunity to watch, Zhu Qingcheng did a lot of favors to the city lord Yang Ji. After Gulai walked into the yard, he saw the spectators gathered around. Although he felt a little unhappy, he didn't say much. City Lord Yang Ji made a lot of money from this opportunity and received a lot of favors, which allowed him to take the opportunity to make a fortune. When Gulai walked in, he instantly attracted the attention of the audience. Then, Lu Chuan walked in slowly. After Zhu Qingcheng looked over, he couldn't help but sighed. This Lu Chuan, he even killed the 3 elders of Cheyenne woman. He really is fearless. But this strange man, when did he offend Cheyenne woman? Isn't this his first time in Cheyenne-Shu City? Zhu Qingcheng felt puzzled and curious. Someone next to him continued, I think there might be some secret hidden in Lu Chuan, so the Lu family and Cheyenne Wu sect are targeting him. Maybe he was forced to kill back. If that's the case, then Gulai is not very moral. He sent people to cause trouble for others, but was killed in return, and he was so angry. Indeed, it's funny that he went to provoke others first, and was killed in return. Hey, keep your voice down. Don't let Elder Gu hear it. Be careful not to get into trouble. Gulai chose to ignore the discussions in the crowd. He now has only one goal, that is to avenge Huang Yuqing and kill Lu Chuan. As for how Huang Yuqing died, he no longer cares. Even if they provoked the other party first, as long as the elder of Cheyenne Wu sect died, Cheyenne Wu sect would definitely take revenge. Gulai walked up to the stage, turned his head, and looked at Lu Chuan, saying, get up here, this is your execution ground. Lu Chuan stared at Gulai, and walked leisurely to the arena. Elder Gu, you covered what I have, and even want to kill me, in order to get it. Can't I resist? Gulai heard this and snorted coldly, don't talk so much nonsense to me. I only know that you killed Huang Yuqing, the 3rd elder of our Cheyenne Wu sect, and you must pay the price for it. Lu Chuan nodded slightly, I understand. It seems that a 3rd elder is not enough. You, the 2nd elder, are also going to come up and die. In this case, I will fulfill your wish. You are so arrogant, you scoundrel. You dare to talk to me like this. Let me see how I will deal with you later. Then, he drew a long sword from behind and held it tightly in his hand. On the blade, you can vaguely see flame patterns, and the handle is dark red, as if it was stained with blood. It's been a long time since I've unsheathed my flame blood sword. Today, I'll use your blood to sacrifice it. Lu Chuan took out the soul-breaking sword from behind. Although the soul-breaking sword was still sealed, it was a real immortal weapon after all. If he really fought with Gulai, he would definitely be better in terms of weapons. City Lord Yang Ji came out, looked at the two of them, and said in a deep voice, are you two ready? Today, under your witness, we will have a life and death duel. Whether it's life or death, it has nothing to do with me or anyone present. If you're ready, you can start at any time. Yang Ji stepped back and handed the arena to the two of them. Gulai held the hilt tightly and walked slowly towards Lu Chuan. Dare to kill my Cheyenne Wu sect elder. Today, I'll make you pay the price. The next moment, he suddenly rushed towards Lu Chuan. He didn't release any martial arts or body movements, and he rushed up, just to test Lu Chuan's strength first. Being able to kill Huang Yuqing and withstand the Lu family's bounty is enough to prove that the man in front of him is definitely not a coward. Although Gulai is arrogant, he still has to be careful when it comes to the real thing. You want to defeat me with this broken sword? You look down on me too much. Gulai's eyes were on the bronze sword in Lu Chuan's hand, which made him feel extremely angry. He took out his best weapon to fight, but the opponent actually used such a rubbish weapon to respond, which made Gulai feel humiliated. The audience around him also all focused their eyes on the bronze sword in Lu Chuan's hand. It's just a bronze sword. Isn't it too shabby? Indeed, I want to help him get a good sword. How can he fight Gulai with this kind of weapon? From the current point of view, he has already lost in terms of weapons. I guess that in the first round of fighting, Lu Chuan's sword will break on the spot. In the crowd, Gu Xiaorao and Gu Xiaosang, as well as Zhan Xianyu, Zhan Xianheng and others were all present. Among the four, only Zhan Xianheng was worried about Lu Chuan. He has been dealing with people from major families in Xianxu City for many years, so he naturally knows how strong Gulai is. In his opinion, Gulai is one of the top martial artists in Xianxu City, and can be said to be the top powerhouse in Xianxu City. He knows Gulai very well, but he has never seen Lu Chuan fight, so he is worried about Lu Chuan. Gu Xiaorao and Gu Xiaosang, who are the people who trust Lu Chuan the most, sit aside and watch the arena, with almost no pressure. I heard that Gulai also has the ability to control fire. I wonder how strong he is. Gu Xiaosang said. If we compare the ability to control fire, then I'm afraid no one can compare to Lu Chuan. After all, Lu Chuan has two great divine fires in his body. At least in Xianxu City, no one can be his opponent. Gu Xiaorao looked at Lu Chuan confidently. At this time, Gulai slashed at him with a fierce momentum, forcing Lu Chuan to counterattack quickly. He blocked the soul-breaking sword in front of him, and blocked Gulai's sword. Clang. Everyone looked over, and was surprised to find that the bronze sword in Lu Chuan's hand was intact and easily blocked Gulai's fierce attack. Chapter 662. The Power of Divine Fire. Gulai slashed with his sword, but was blocked by Lu Chuan. He quickly stepped back, frowned, and stared at Lu Chuan seriously. What was somewhat unexpected to him was that Lu Chuan's bronze sword was not damaged at all, not even a small gap. Gulai stared at Lu Chuan with his eyes and said coldly, "It can be seen that you are indeed quite powerful. I will not waste time with you. Next, bear my fierce fire attack." He raised his left hand, opened his mouth and bit his left thumb, and blood immediately came out. Then, he pressed his finger on the blade. He slashed hard, leaving a bright blood mark on the blade. Boom. The next moment, a fierce fire suddenly emerged from the blade, and the fierce fire wrapped around the blade, burning fiercely. Gulai swung the long sword twice, and the flames also danced fiercely. Die. Suddenly, sparks flew under his feet, and the whole person rushed towards Lu Chuan at an extremely fast speed. His speed, coupled with his agile posture, was not inferior to those young men at all. Almost in a breath, he rushed to Lu Chuan. Fiery blade technique. He swung his sword directly, with dazzling flames, and the sharp blade fell towards Lu Chuan. The people around were shocked. It's rare to see someone who can make Gulai fight seriously from the beginning. It seems that this is not a crushing duel, this will be something to watch. Lu Chuan's face is calm. It seems that he is very confident. That's nonsense. Can a person who can withstand the bounty of the Lu family be an ordinary person? The blade with blazing flames fell, and Lu Chuan saw it, and he raised his sword, to block it without hesitation. Clang! Exclamation mark. The swords collided, and a dazzling spark burst out. After blocking Gulai's attack, Lu Chuan followed up with a sword, and stabbed it out. Swish! The sharp sword stabbed out, making Gulai's heart tighten, and he quickly retreated a few steps to distance himself. But at this moment, Lu Chuan seized the opportunity and used the extreme shadow flash, instantly shortening the distance between the two. Swish! Lu Chuan's figure flashed, and he rushed to Gulai quickly. Extreme shadow flash. This is a martial art from Kunlun domain. You bastard are learning very quickly. Gulai snorted coldly, and then swept out at Lu Chuan with the flame blood knife in his hand. Boom! Exclamation mark. He swept out suddenly, and the flames were released instantly, forming a huge fireball, attacking Lu Chuan. Obviously, this was released by him to deal with Lu Chuan's attack. No one dared to rush in with this fireball, otherwise they would be severely burned all over their body. However, to everyone's surprise, Lu Chuan directly ignored the fireball released by Gulai, and rushed towards Gulai with a blazing fire. Seeing this, Gulai frowned and shouted coldly, "You lunatic, you dare to rush up with this fireball? Since you want to die so much, then I will fulfill your wish." Lu Chuan rushed into the fireball, and almost instantly, everyone present was in an uproar. Is Lu Chuan crazy? He actually rushed in with this ball of fire. Isn't he afraid of being burned to death? He is so brave. If he rushes in rashly and fails to achieve any effect, won't he lose a lot? This is just a gamble. What a lunatic. To crazy. He can do such a thing. Isn't he afraid of being burned by the fireball? City Lord Yang Ji looked at Lu Chuan's figure and couldn't help but sigh. It's rare to see such a brave warrior nowadays. Every duel is fought timidly. Not at all. Zhu Qingcheng took a breath of cold air. This Lu Chuan is really a ruthless person. If I were on the stage, facing this ball of fire, my first reaction would definitely be to retreat and avoid it. At this time, Lu Chuan stabbed at Gulai with a sword. Lu Chuan's speed made Gulai unable to react, and he could only swing a knife to chop at Lu Chuan. Swish. Lu Chuan stabbed Gulai in the lower abdomen with a sword, and blood flowed out along the sword. Gulai also swung out with his sword. He knew that he could not avoid Lu Chuan's attack, so he could only strike back and try not to suffer any loss. However, Lu Chuan's reaction speed exceeded his expectations. After the sword was thrust out, facing the fire knife swung by Gulai, Lu Chuan quickly dodged the sword by turning sideways. After dodging the attack, Lu Chuan retracted the sword and stepped back several steps. After the sword was drawn out, blood immediately flowed out, staining a large area of clothing. Gulai's face became solemn and gloomy. He had never expected that he would fall into a disadvantage. After being stabbed by the sword, his advantage was much weaker. In the audience, everyone sighed and shook their heads when they saw this scene. Gulai was also a legendary figure in Xianshu City. He did not expect that he would suffer such a big loss at the hands of a young warrior. Zhao Shengyang's face was extremely ugly at this moment. If his master could not defeat his opponent, he would not be able to walk out of here alive today. He clenched his fists and sweated for Gulai. He was flustered and a little uneasy. Gulai stared at Lu Chuan and found that Lu Chuan had just passed through the fireball, but there was no wound on his body, no trace of burns. Impossible. Why didn't the flame have any effect on you? Gulai widened his eyes and shouted in surprise. Lu Chuan smiled faintly. Gulai, you are so unlucky. As one of the best flame controllers in Xianshu City, you just happened to meet me. My ability to control flames is stronger than yours. Moreover, the raging fire in my body is not comparable to your raging fire. Then, the body of Lu Chuan's soul-breaking sword ignited the sun god fire. The dazzling flames illuminated the surroundings. Obviously, the flames on Lu Chuan's weapon were more dazzling and hotter. Seeing this, Gulai felt very bad. He didn't expect that Lu Chuan also had the ability to control raging fire. He didn't know much about Lu Chuan, but just seeing that the other party was a young warrior made him full of confidence to duel with Lu Chuan. However, it was precisely because he knew too little that he suffered such a big loss. He stared at the flames on Lu Chuan's bronze sword, and he could clearly feel that the temperature of the flames was very terrifying. Compared with it, his own flame blood sword was simply not worth mentioning. This time it was really a small witch meeting a big witch, just encountering an opponent of the same type. Now, you should know that you are doomed to fail. You can never be my opponent. Lu Chuan hadn't used his full strength yet, and Gulai was almost dying. Gulai's most proud fiery sword skill became insignificant in front of Lu Chuan. When he fought with other warriors, this fiery sword skill was extremely fierce, unstoppable, and whoever wanted to kill him would be killed. However, when he met Lu Chuan, his fiery sword skill immediately wilted. The outcome is not yet determined, but I'm not completely without a chance, Gulai said in a deep voice, as if he realized that he was not an opponent and planned to find another way. Chapter 663 Complete Suppression. It only took a few rounds for this duel to be decided from the beginning to the end. Gulai was clearly at a disadvantage, which was beyond everyone's expectations. Previously, when they had the honor of seeing Gulai fight in person, they could see a shocking scene. No matter how strong the opponent was, he would be burned to ashes by his fiery swordsmanship. However, the thing that Gulai was most proud of lost its effect instantly when it was placed in Lu Chuan's hands. Gulai tightly grasped the hilt of the knife and looked at Lu Chuan coldly. Do you really think that this is all I have? Next, I will let you know the strength and foundation of my second elder of Xianwu sect. He suddenly became furious. Veins popped out all over his body, muscles in his arms bulged, and his eyes widened with anger. Huang Yuking, I will avenge you now. he roared, and the next moment, his upper body clothes exploded directly, turning into countless pieces of cloth that shot out in all directions. Then, everyone saw the hideous muscles all over his body. Gulai stood there, with white mist emanating from his body. He seemed to have used some method to increase his upper limit and temporarily improve his strength. This kind of trick is a life-saving trick, and it is a kind of martial arts that many top warriors will learn. However, once this kind of martial arts is used, it basically means that this person has reached the end of his strength, has been forced into a desperate situation, and intends to give it a try. Obviously, this is what Gulai is like now. He was forced into a desperate situation by Lu Chuan. He knew that, if he didn't use his last resort, he would never have the chance to use it in this life. His eyes were bloodshot, staring at Lu Chuan. Now, it's you who should die. Ha ha ha, young man, you are still too little prepared after all. Gulai laughed triumphantly. He had enough confidence in his last trump card. As long as he used it, he would be able to solve any difficult enemy. In the audience, Zhao Shengyang couldn't help but exclaimed after seeing this scene. Master, kill this bastard. After shouting excitedly, his heart sank. He knew this last life-saving trick of his master. Once used, it will cause great damage to oneself. Even, it may cause some hidden diseases that will be carried for a lifetime. What's more, Gulai is old, nearly 60 years old. It is conceivable that, even if he defeats his opponent, by using this martial art, it will have a significant impact on his body. Seeing this, Lu Chuan rushed up again with a sword. Gulai's strength has not even broken through to the martial emperor realm. He has always relied on his outstanding swordsmanship to walk the rivers and lakes. Therefore, in terms of hard power, Lu Chuan is not inferior to Gulai at all. Even if Gulai used his trump card, Lu Chuan still believed that he had the strength to take down this old swordsman. Swish. Gulai was not at all weak and rushed towards Lu Chuan. This last fight made everyone pay close attention. In the audience, Zanshai and Heng sighed. It is rare to be able to force Gulai to this point. Gulai lived a carefree life, but at the end, he was taken away by a young warrior. He must have died with regret. Zanshai and Heng sighed and shook his head slightly, seeming to be a little regretful. With Gulai's death, they, who represented the power of Xianshu City, were weakened, which was somewhat affected. Zanshai was calmer. He knew from Lu Chuan that Lu Chuan was the one who destroyed the Lu mansion, so at the beginning of this duel, he trusted Lu Chuan without reservation. Would a person who destroyed the Lu mansion be afraid of an elder of Xianwu sect? I'm afraid that the entire Xianwu sect would need to come together to beat Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan ran into Gulai head-on, and both sides quickly swung their weapons, and the swords collided wildly, and dazzling sparks splashed in all directions. Indistinctly, Lu Chuan actually fell into the disadvantage, and was beaten back again and again. Gulai's swordsmanship was more mature, and under the continuous swings, Lu Chuan could only defend. Lu Chuan did not study much about swordsmanship, and only got a copy of the Xiaoyao sword manual. However, the swordsmanship taught in this sword manual was used to deal with evil spirits, and it was obviously the wrong place to use it to fight against humans. Therefore, Lu Chuan was like a swordsman who had never learned swordsmanship fighting Gulai. In this way, even if he was stronger than his opponent, Lu Chuan still fell into a disadvantage. Seeing that he had the upper hand, Gulai laughed triumphantly. Ha 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 ha, you are just so-so. It seems that you have reached the end. You can't go on the road ahead. Lu Chuan's expression was indifferent. He did not kill Gulai quickly, but actually wanted to practice swordsmanship with this guy. After all, Gulai's swordsmanship can be said to be the top level in Xianshu City. With each move, Lu Chuan became more and more proficient in dealing with it. Although in the eyes of outsiders, Lu Chuan was at a disadvantage, being beaten back step by step, and even almost reaching the edge of the arena. But for Lu Chuan, he had already made up his mind. Gulai's death depended on when he didn't want to continue practicing swordsmanship. After several rounds of fighting, Gulai took a few steps back. He gasped heavily, staring at Lu Chuan. He began to wonder why Lu Chuan was like nothing happened. He was out of breath from the fight, but Lu Chuan was as calm as water, just breathing a little faster. He shook his head and chose not to think too much. He had the upper hand and was the advantaged party. If he continued to fight, he would definitely win. He could only comfort himself in this way, and he raised his weapon again and rushed towards Lu Chuan. After another round of fighting, Lu Chuan clearly felt that Gulai's strength was too weak, and his physical strength seemed to be running out. This is meaningless. Lu Chuan sighed helplessly. It seems that it is time to end this battle. Gulai suddenly opened his eyes wide and glared at Lu Chuan. What do you mean? The next moment, Lu Chuan used the martial arts skill Extreme Shadow Flash and rushed towards Gulai at an extremely fast speed. Gulai was exhausted. Facing Lu Chuan's rush, he could only retreat and block at the same time. Gulai's blocking was full of loopholes in Lu Chuan's eyes. He stabbed Gulai directly with the sword. Swish! The flaming sword pierced Gulai's abdomen. This time was different from the last time. The sun god fire was released instantly and enveloped Gulai in an instant. Boom! Exclamation mark. Gulai was ignited into a fireman. He struggled wildly for a while and finally lost his life and lay on the ground. The fire was still burning and Gulai was burned into a pile of black charcoal. Seeing this, Zhao Shengyang immediately lost control and became excited. "Asshole! You dare to kill my master! I will never forgive you!" he roared loudly. Seeing this, everyone in the audience took a deep breath. In this duel, Gulai was defeated miserably. In everyone's previous impression, Gulai was a real strong man, strong and stable, and ordinary people could not beat him. But now, a young man came to Xianshu City and killed Gulai in such an easy manner, which was simply a shock to their cognition. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 664, Fleeing in Panic. Lu Chuan's sun god fire easily burned Gulai to ashes. This scene made everyone present terrified. In the crowd, Zhao Shengyang roared in anger. How could he sit still in the audience when his most beloved master was killed? He stood up and roared at Lu Chuan. "Asshole! You dare to kill my master! I will not forgive you!" His eyes were red and his emotions were extremely excited and his whole face turned red. Then, he drew the sword behind him and it seemed that he really wanted to fight Lu Chuan to the death. Lu Chuan looked down at him and sneered. "Your master's skills were inferior to others and he died under my sword. Is there a problem with that? If I were not his opponent today, he might not leave me alive. I can even kill your uncle, and it would be easy to kill your master. If you Xianwu sect are still not convinced, just come and find trouble with me. I'm never afraid of you Xianwu sect." Lu Chuan's words shocked everyone present. One person declared war on Xianwu sect. Such a feat completely amazed all of them. At this time, Zhao Shengyang was breathing heavily, and the anger in his heart had not subsided. But soon, he gradually realized that he was definitely not Lu Chuan's opponent. His mind began to clear up a little, and the emotional look just now gradually disappeared. He swallowed nervously. If he didn't escape from here quickly, he would definitely die in Lu Chuan's hands. He looked down to the side and saw that there was no one guarding the door. He just had to rush over and leave here quickly. At this moment, the city lord Yang Ji hurried out. After the duel just now, he looked at Lu Chuan without any frivolous look in his eyes. The young man who could kill Gulai so easily must have great ambitions in the future. He could not imagine what kind of peak position he could reach. He looked at Lu Chuan and said with a smile, "Mr. Lu, this duel has ended here and the result has been decided. However, the duel should be kept on the duel field and should not affect the outside of the field. You should not cause trouble to Cheyenne woman anymore, and Cheyenne woman should stop here. The consecutive loss of 2 elder level figures is undoubtedly a major blow to Cheyenne woman. Next, you should rest and recuperate well and recover your vitality." After speaking, Yang Ji looked at Zhao Shengyang. He still hoped to reconcile the conflict between the two sides, although the hope was slim. But at this moment, Zhao Shengyang suddenly rushed out of the crowd and ran towards the gate. His speed was extremely fast. At this moment, he seemed to have burst out all his speed and rushed towards the door at his fastest speed. Seeing this, everyone was surprised that Zhao Shengyang actually escaped without saying a word. It seemed that he also knew that his current situation was very dangerous. If he was not careful, he would die here. Seeing this, Yang Ji sighed helplessly. He knew in his heart that Zhao Shengyang must have gone back to inform the police. However, as for how Cheyenne Woman would solve this problem, it was hard to say. The consecutive loss of 2 elder level figures was a major loss not only for a sect, but also for a family. Whether it was the Zhen family, the Lin family, the Huang family, or the ZHU family. For these families, if they lost 2 elder level figures in a row, the core support point of the family would be greatly weakened. Under such circumstances, if you still want to fight with others, and continue to fight, there will be no good results. Yang Ji looked at Lu Chuan and quickly persuaded him. Mr. Lu, today's duel is limited to you and Gulai. You should let Zhao Shengyang go. If you don't even spare the younger generation, Cheyenne Woman will really fight to the death. After the loss of 2 elders, Cheyenne Woman will definitely cultivate new strong men to take the position in the future. This Zhao Shengyang may be one of them. If even the future seedlings are strangled, Cheyenne Woman will definitely be furious. This is equivalent to killing the last hope of Cheyenne Woman. Lu Chuan looked at Yang Ji and asked, you are worthy of being the city lord. Are you good at reconciling conflicts? But do you think that the conflict between me and Cheyenne Woman can really be reconciled? Cheyenne Woman will never forgive me, and accordingly, I will not forgive Cheyenne Woman. Lu Chuan said coldly, which was equivalent to classifying Cheyenne Woman as a mortal enemy. Hearing this, Yang Ji sighed helplessly. I know. I just want to ease the situation. Cheyenshu City is already in chaos. I don't want this city to be full of disputes and fights. This is very detrimental to the development of our Cheyenshu City. In the near future, the Lu family will send people to Cheyenshu City. At that time, it will be another big trouble. He sighed helplessly and turned to leave. The rest of the audience was still immersed in the shock that Lu Chuan had just brought them. Originally, they came here to appreciate Gulai's battle scenes, but they didn't expect to see Gulai's miserable defeat. Although the battle was exciting, this result was indeed not what they wanted to see. Lu Chuan came to the stage and returned to Guxiaora and Guxiaora sang. Easily solved. The trouble of Cheyenne Wu sect is not a trouble. Lu Chuan said calmly. At present, the biggest trouble for him is not Cheyenne Wu sect, but the Lu family. This is the biggest resistance Lu Chuan has encountered since entering Kunlun domain. Then Zhao Shengyang has escaped. Isn't that a big problem? Gu Xiaosang asked curiously. How about chasing him and eradicating the roots? Lu Chuan shook his head slightly. Forget it. The alleys in Cheyenshu City are intricate and complicated. I'm afraid it's hard to catch up with him. Let him go. I'm afraid he won't be able to stir up any waves. Just let him go. Gu Xiaorao nodded slightly. That's right. The 2 elders are dead. What can he do if he goes back? At this time, Zhan Xianheng came over, and after seeing Lu Chuan's performance, he was completely convinced by Lu Chuan. For the first time, a flattering smile appeared on his face. Mr. Lu's strength is so strong. He has never shown it before. I didn't know you were so hidden. Don't worry, you will live in our Zhen family in the future. If the Cheyenne Wu sect comes to our door, we will definitely stand on your side. When he said this, he was full of confidence. Of course, he has the confidence to say such words now. After all, Lu Chuan had killed the 2nd and 3rd elders of Cheyenne Wu sect. Now that Cheyenne Wu sect was not as strong as before, the Zhen family would not be afraid. On the other side, Zhao Shengyang fled in a panic. He ran wildly on the street, bumping into several passers-by, causing a lot of curses on the street. The first thing he did when he fled in a hurry was not to return to Cheyenne Wu sect, but to run wildly towards a remote area in the south of the city. Chapter 665. Wait for my news here. Zhao Shengyang ran all the way, and soon, he came to a dilapidated thatched house. From the outside, this dilapidated thatched house was completely an abandoned house, and it was impossible for anyone to live here. However, Zhao Shengyang stood in front of the door and knocked hard. The rhythm of his knocking on the door was like typing a password. He knocked more than 10 times in a row and waited quietly. Suddenly, there was a creak, and the dilapidated wooden door was opened, and a figure appeared in front of Zhao Shengyang. Brother Bei, it's a good thing you are here. Something bad has happened. The sect is in danger. You must help with this, Zhao Shengyang shouted with a sad face. Standing in front of him was Bei Hao, the first assassin of Xianshu City. He stared at Zhao Shengyang, and for a moment he felt that Zhao Shengyang in front of him was a little strange. He had lost his former arrogance and unrestrainedness, and now he became extremely embarrassed. He fled here in a panic, begging for something with a sad face. What happened? Brother Bei, don't you know? Today is the day my master duels with that bastard Lu Chuan. Really? The result is out, right? Of course, the result is out. Zhao Shengyang lowered his head, not daring to look up at Bei Hao. Tell me, is your master dead? That's right. He died at the hands of Lu Chuan. That bastard Lu Chuan first killed Elder Huang, and then killed my master. With such a deep hatred, I will never forgive him, Zhao Shengyang said, clenching his fists. Is it useful, if you can't forgive him? You are not his opponent. So, Brother Bei, I'm here to find you. Bei Hao sighed. Actually, I've known for a long time that Huang Yuking died at the hands of Lu Chuan. Before Lu Chuan arrived in Xianshu City, I fought with him. Zhao Shengyang suddenly widened his eyes and looked at Bei Hao in disbelief. Since you knew that, why didn't you say it? Also, what was the result of your fight with him? Bei Hao snorted coldly. When my master expelled me from the sect, none of you spoke to me. Do I need to report things to you? As for the result of the fight, it was naturally that I escaped in a panic. Otherwise, you wouldn't see Lu Chuan now, let alone me. Zhao Shengyang sighed. So, even you are not his opponent? Bei Hao was immediately angry and retorted. Who do you say is not his opponent? You just said that you escaped in a panic. Zhao Shengyang looked at Bei Hao with curiosity. Nonsense. When I intercepted him halfway, it was on a large plain, and the terrain was unfamiliar to me. If it were in Xianshu City, I would have set up a tight net, and he would have no choice but to wait for death. Hearing this, Zhao Shengyang looked at Bei Hao curiously. Are you so confident? My master is not his opponent. How could you be his opponent? Bei Hao glared at him and asked, then why did you come to me? Aren't you asking me to kill that guy? Zhao Shengyang nodded helplessly. Although there is a gap in hard power, you are very familiar with Xianshu City, and there are endless assassination methods. So, if you take action, you still have a chance to kill Lu Chuan. I'm just about to settle accounts with that bastard. Even if you don't come to me, I will take action against that guy, Bei Hao said, and pushed the door open completely. You come in and hide first, lest that guy chase you. Zhao Shengyang let out a long breath. Don't worry, that guy didn't come to chase me, but you should quickly take action against that bastard. I don't want to see that bastard alive in this world. 2 elders of Xianwu sect were killed. You must avenge Xianwu sect. Zhao Shengyang shouted with great heartache. The loss of 2 elders in the sect is equivalent to Xianwu sect falling to a second-rate force. In this Xianshu City, I'm afraid that it will no longer have any say. Thinking of this, he was extremely heartbroken. He was already tied to Xianwu sect. If the sect was strong, he would live comfortably, and if the sect was weak, he would live poorly. Bei Hao nodded slightly. You just stay here and wait for my news. I'll leave now. After speaking, Bei Hao walked out of the yard. Looking at Bei Hao's back, Zhao Shengyang's anger eased a lot. In Xianshu City, the explosive news spread throughout the city in an instant. In just a few hours, the news that Xianwu lost 2 elders spread everywhere. Everyone in Xianshu City knew that, after losing 2 elders, Xianwu would decline sharply and become a second-rate sect. What people talked about most was Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan killed 2 elders of Xianwu on his own, and withstood the pressure of the Lu family's bounty, and has survived to this day. There was even a commotion in the city, speculating that Lu Chuan might be the one who destroyed the Lu mansion. After all, there was a direct conflict between them, so Lu Chuan was the most suspicious. This duel caused a lot of trouble in the city, refreshing everyone's perception of Lu Chuan in the city. This unknown young man made several consecutive moves, which amazed everyone. At this time, Lu Chuan had returned to the Zhen mansion. The Zhen family's views on Lu Chuan changed again. Now, although they took in Lu Chuan, they would be hostile to the Lu family and Xianwu. But they felt that it was worth it. Although it would be risky, it was not completely without benefits. Lu Chuan returned to the Zen mansion and was personally greeted by Zengiliu. Facing this lifesaver, Zengiliu, despite his age, behaved quite modestly. "Mr. Lu is back. I heard that you defeated Gulai and caused heated discussions throughout the city. It seems that your strength has reached the peak of Xianshu City." Zengiliu sighed. Lu Chuan looked at Zengiliu and said, "It's just a Xianwu sect. It's not a big threat to me. What I care about most is the Lu family. Only the Lu family can pose the greatest threat to me." Zengiliu nodded slightly. "That's true. The Lu family is the top family not only in Xianshu City, but also in the entire Kunlun domain. However, they also have to fight against hostile families recently, so they can't spare their hands for the time being. But we still have to be vigilant. Once they besiege a certain force with all their strength, I'm afraid no one in the entire Kunlun domain can stop them." Zengiliu frowned and said, "If they want, they can completely surround the entire Xianshu City and even kill all of us. It won't be a problem. Mr. Lu, when you face the Lu family in the future, it will definitely not be enough to rely on your current strength." Lu Chuan nodded heavily. "Of course I know this, so I'm still on the road to becoming stronger." At this moment, a servant hurried over and shouted at Zengiliu, "Master, something terrible has happened. Killing orders have suddenly been posted everywhere in the city, targeting Master Lu." Chapter 666, Killing Order. The servant who came hurriedly, bent over and stood in front of Zengiliu, with an extremely nervous expression. Zengiliu looked at him and asked hurriedly, "What killing order? Explain clearly." Just now, a large number of killing orders were suddenly posted in the streets and alleys of the city. It said that Lu Chuan must be killed within 3 days. As for who did it, there is no conclusion yet. Zengiliu fell into deep thought after hearing this. Gu Xiaorao frowned and asked, "Could it be that someone from the Lu family is coming?" "No way. If they came, would they need to post this thing? I guess they would just do it directly." Zan Xiaonao continued. Gu Xiaosang looked at the servants and asked, "Doesn't anyone know who posted it? It's so short a time to post it all over the city. It doesn't look like the work of one person." The servants hurriedly said respectfully, "Miss Gu, it was the beggars in the city who did it. They seem to have received instructions from someone and posted the killing order in every corner. As for the mastermind behind the scenes, we still don't know it." Then, Zengiliu sighed. "It seems that it can only be that one person." "Who?" Lu Chuan looked at Zengiliu. "Beihao." Lu Chuan frowned slightly. "Beihao? Him?" Zengiliu looked at Lu Chuan and asked hurriedly, "Do you know him?" "Of course I know him. When I came to Xianshu City, I was stopped by this guy and we even had a fight." Hearing this, Zan Xiaonao hurriedly said, "Yes, what Lu Chuan said is true. I was also on the carriage at the time. We did meet this Beihao. However, he didn't get any benefits and was chased away by us. Of course, Lu Chuan chased him away alone. I was just watching from the side." Zan Xiaonao smiled awkwardly. Zengiliu nodded slightly. "So that's how it is. This guy has targeted Lu Chuan from the beginning and is only now preparing for a second attack. It seems that he is prepared. I have seen the kill order he posted before. Under normal circumstances, only when Beihao encounters a strong enemy and cannot solve it for a while, he will make preparations in secret. When the time is right and he is confident that he can kill the target, he will post a kill order. This is announcing to the world that I have killed someone. In the next few days, this person must die, and there will be no way for him to survive. This is his self-confidence. So far, he has done this 4 times without failure." Zengiliu sighed. "This guy is indeed the #1 assassin in Xianshu City. It's not that he is so strong, but that he is patient enough. He will not take action until all preparations are done." Zengiliu looked at Lu Chuan. "Perhaps his kill record has been broken by you. By the way, when you met him, how did you break his net?" Zengiliu asked curiously. Lu Chuan replied calmly, "Just walk over. Is it that simple?" "Of course it's that simple." Lu Chuan's solution to Beihao's trap is not as simple as just walking over. The key lies in the sun god fire on Lu Chuan's body. The power of the god fire is enough to burn everything, not to mention those sharp and thin filaments. Therefore, everything Beihao arranged was in vain for Lu Chuan. This guy said he would kill you within 3 days. You must be careful in these 3 days. Zangilio continued, otherwise, you might as well stay in Zan's mansion, and don't go out. After 3 days, go and fight that bastard. If you lose, you won't lose face. Lu Chuan shook his head decisively, and said with a smile, since my strength is not inferior to his, why should I hide here? If he wants to cause trouble for me, just come directly. Lu Chuan did not regard Beihao as an important enemy at all. Although this guy is famous in Xianshu City, and everyone knows that he is the top assassin in Xianshu City, in Lu Chuan's eyes, this guy's not a strong opponent. Father, do you know a lot about this guy? Zan Xianyu asked. He is from Xianwu sect, but for some reason, he was kicked out of the sect by Xianwu sect, and became a wild man. Then he began to study assassination, and became the #1 assassin in Xianshu City. This guy is very talented, but he does not obey the sect's discipline, and he is focused on the lower 3 ways. He doesn't want to fight with others openly, and always wants to use shady tricks. So Xianwu sect doesn't like him, and kicked him out. But in fact, he still has a lot of feelings for the sect. After all, he is an orphan who grew up in Xianwu sect. The reason why he targeted Lu Chuan is probably because he knew that Lu Chuan killed Huan Yuking, so he went to take revenge. Zan Giliu analyzed. Lu Chuan nodded slightly. I see. However, let him be. If he appears in front of me, I will kill him directly without mercy. If he doesn't dare to show up, then let this fly live a little longer. Lu Chuan walked towards his house, and Gu Xiaorao and Gu Xiaosang followed him. Zan Xianyu looked at Lu Chuan's back and sighed that Beihao actually had the guts to issue a killing order to him. He just killed Gu Lai. Are you underestimating Beihao? Beihao's strength has long surpassed those elders of Xianwu sect. He is extremely talented. If he stayed in the sect, he would definitely be the youngest elder level figure in the sect now. But how could such a genius be restrained? Zan Giliu sighed. He issued the killing order 4 times without a single mistake, and all of his opponents were brutally assassinated. In the past 5 or 6 years, he hasn't issued a killing order again. This is entirely because there are no real strong people in Xianshu City that he looks up to. Now, the past Beihao is back. Let's see what he has prepared. Zan Xianyu frowned and asked solemnly, do you mean that Lu Chuan is really in danger this time? It's hard to say. These 2 people are both gifted, who can say for sure. Besides, have you seen Lu Chuan's true strength? Zan Xianyu shook his head. Then have you seen Beihao's true strength? Zan Xianyu still shook his head. That's right, it's hard to say what the result will be. By the way, you and Xianheng stay by their yard. Beihao is a guy who will do anything. Be careful that he will target the Gu sisters. Zan Xianyu nodded slightly, turned his head, and looked at Zan Xianheng. Brother, let's go. The 2 of them quickly left the yard, and walked towards the guest room. At this time, Lu Chuan returned to the guest room, poured a cup of tea, and took 2 sips. Xiaorao, don't go out recently. Be careful that the guy will attack you. Gu Xiaorao nodded slightly. I won't cause you any trouble. During this time, I will stay here and not go out. Lu Chuan put down the teacup, and said in a deep voice, I will kill this Beihao as soon as possible. Chapter 667 Waiting for the Rabbit. Xianshu City has become very deserted today. All the shops on the street are closed, and there are few figures on the street. It is a bit strange. The reason is, of course, that the streets are full of killing orders. This is all from Beihao's hands. When he mobilized his power to post killing orders all over the city, everyone in the city was afraid. Many people in the city have seen Beihao's methods. This man is cold and ruthless, killing people like flies. If passers-by see him setting up a killing trap, they will definitely be killed by him, without mercy and meat. Therefore, during this period of time, most people in the city did not dare to go out, for fear that they would accidentally run into Beihao. In the early morning in the Zen mansion, Lu Chuan got up early and practiced in the yard. Zan Xianyu walked in. He had just finished breakfast. After walking into the yard, he walked towards Gu Xiaorao and Gu Xiaosang. Do you have anything to buy? I'm just about to go out, so I'll bring it back for you. Gu Xiaorao tilted her head and thought for a while, then shook her head slightly and said, I don't need to buy anything. Well, I don't have anything to buy either, so I won't bother you. Guzaya-san said with a smile. Zanshire Nayu nodded slightly. That's good. Don't go out recently. At least wait until 3 days later, or until that guy shows up, and then we kill that bastard. Well, the Zen mansion is very safe. We won't go out. Guzaya nodded seriously. Luchuan walked towards Zanshire Nayu and asked, is there any news about Beiheo? Not yet. It's the second day, and this guy has not made any other moves, except posting killing orders everywhere. However, his move has scared the residents of the whole city. Now the streets are very deserted, and everyone stays at home, for fear of running into this guy when they go out. It's been a day, and this guy should have some action. I don't know what he is doing. Zanshire Nayu lowered his head, and pondered in confusion. No matter that guy, if he shows up, I will kill him. If he doesn't show up, it's just bluffing, and he must have given up. This guy will definitely not give up. He is very brave, so you should be prepared. Zanshire Nayu looked at Luchuan, and said with some worry, although you are stronger than that guy, after all, that guy is in the dark, and you are in the light. You don't know where he is, but he knows where you live. So, you still have to be cautious, and don't fall for this guy. Zanshire Nayu's advice. Luchuan just nodded with goodwill. What he said is not without reason. It is always good to be cautious. What's more, Beiheo has never failed to issue a killing order in Shianshu City. Once issued, the target must die. This concept has been deeply implanted in the minds of everyone in Shianshu City. Therefore, in the eyes of most people, Luchuan is now in an extremely dangerous situation. Luchuan held his chin and pondered. If Beiheo wanted to take action, what would he do? The traps this guy set up are mainly made of silk threads, which are used to cut and whip the enemy. If I don't go out, then he won't be able to do anything to me. Luchuan thought that Beiheo should not be able to enter the Zen mansion to attack him. Guzaya walked over, looked at Luchuan, and said, tomorrow is the last day. That guy said he would take action within 3 days. I think he is just talking. Who knows what he is planning? Just keep waiting. At this moment, Zanshire Nayu suddenly rushed in. Not long after he left, he ran back in a hurry. Looking at his panic, he looked like he had seen a ghost. He hurriedly walked towards Luchuan. What's the situation? It makes you so anxious? Zanshire Nayu walked quickly, looked at Luchuan, and sighed helplessly. We just received news that more than a dozen of our Zen family's martial arts students have disappeared in succession. Even until now, people are still missing. And just now, we found the body of one of the warriors. He was dismembered and thrown into a wasteland. The cut surfaces were smooth and neat. When we went over to take a look, we immediately knew who did it. Luchuan frowned slightly. Beiheo took action. He chose to attack the people in your martial arts school first. Zanshire Nayu nodded heavily. Yes, that's exactly what he did. He must also know that you are living in the Zen family now and are protected by our Zen family. So, if he rashly breaks in here alone, he will probably have to fight with fewer people. His chances of winning were originally low, so he probably has no chance at all. I'm afraid his purpose in doing this today is to mobilize us over there. Luchuan nodded slightly. In that case, then you go over and protect yours and family's students well. Zanshire Nayu shook his head repeatedly. How can this be possible? What if that bastard takes advantage of the opportunity and sneaks in? Take advantage of the weakness? Take advantage of whose weakness? Just go ahead and don't worry. If that guy dares to come over, I will naturally deal with him. This is not good. What if something happens to you? The loss will be too great. That guy is extremely ruthless. He will definitely kill you if he finds your weakness. Luchuan just smiled faintly. I will also kill you. Don't worry. Take your people to your martial arts gym quickly. If that bastard dares to come, I will let him die here. Zanshire Nayu took a deep breath. Then, okay, then I'll go first. My eldest brother and second brother will go with me. My old father will stay in the Zen mansion for the time being, but I'm afraid he can't help much. He is old and his strength has decreased a lot. No problem, I'm enough alone. I don't need help. Zanshire Nayu nodded heavily. Okay, then I'll go first. After that, he turned and left, walking out of the yard. Guzaya hurried over, grabbed Luchuan's arm, and said, let's go back to the house. You and Xiana-san go back first. I'll sit in the yard. If that guy dares to come, I will kill him directly and won't give him any chance. Xiaoran nodded helplessly. Then you be careful. If you notice something wrong, hide in the house quickly. You don't have to worry about me. You and Xiana-san hide in the room and don't come out. Then, Xiaoran left the yard and returned to the room. Lu Chuan sat at the stone table in the yard and made himself a cup of tea. The sun gradually set, leaving only the last blush to illuminate the sky. The light gradually dimmed, and a slight rustling sound of footsteps gradually approached. Lu Chuan noticed the movement, just smiled slightly, and put down the teacup. Beihao, you are a little slow. You still think I'm slow? I'll send you on the road later, and you'll know whether I'm fast or slow. Chapter 668 Head-on Confrontation. Beihao's voice came from all around, but he could only be heard, and he could not see where he was, let alone locate him by sound. Lu Chuan stood up, looked at the empty yard, and said calmly, as an assassin, you actually make such a big scene when you start to fight. Are you considered a qualified assassin? Do I still need your guidance? I'm ready to kill you, so I have enough confidence. Lu Chuan just smiled faintly and then continued to ask, how do you know that I killed Huang Yuking? Beihao already knew the news of Huang Yuking's death when Lu Chuan left Huacheng. How he knew it was indeed strange. I didn't know that you killed Huang Yuking before you came to Xianshu City. So, I set a trap halfway and wanted to kill you directly. You may not understand how I know, so let me explain it to you. You killed Huang Yuking and Luming at the same time. Lu Chuan raised his eyebrows slightly and then asked, do you know Luming? Nonsense, we are all assassins. It would be strange if we don't know each other. I knew he was coming to Huacheng, so I came to visit him specially. We reminisced about the past, and I learned from him the goal of his action this time, and I also knew that he was going to work with Huang Yuking. He made an appointment with me to meet at the restaurant after the matter was settled, but I didn't wait for him. At that time, I knew that it was you who killed Luming and Huang Yuking. Beihao sneered. This Luming, as an assassin from the Lu family, actually surrendered in Huacheng. He is really a waste. In the end, I still have to do it myself. Lu Chuan nodded slightly. I see. Since you knew it a long time ago, why didn't you tell Xiam woman? Do I have to answer whatever you ask? You might as well think about how to get out of this yard. Lu Chuan sneered. It seems that there is a conflict between you and Cheyenne woman. The traps you set are just futile to me. You are so arrogant. At the beginning, we were in an open area, so my traps could not play the greatest role. Now, I will let you know my true strength. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared on the wall. The next moment, he suddenly waved his hand, and 5 thin silk threads connected to his 5 fingers slapped towards Lu Chuan. Swish! Exclamation mark. The silk thread burst out with a sharp sound of breaking through the air. Just by listening to the sound, you can tell that this attack is very fierce. Lu Chuan quickly dodged sideways and avoided Beihao's attack. Boom! Exclamation mark. The silk thread hit the stone table next to Lu Chuan, and there was an explosion, and the stone table exploded directly. Lu Chuan looked back and saw this, and immediately became cautious. This guy's strength was indeed not weak. The key was that his moves were too fierce, and the power of each move was quite amazing. If this attack had hit Lu Chuan himself, even if he had a very strong physical quality, he would have suffered considerable damage. Lu Chuan looked up at the wall and saw that Beihao's figure had disappeared. The next moment, a thread as thin as a hair shot towards Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan's perception was released to the limit, and he barely sensed the attacking thread. He quickly dodged the incoming thread by turning sideways. Then, Lu Chuan did not hesitate to activate the sun god fire in his body. Boom! Exclamation mark. The flames burned all over his body, and the hot and bright sun god fire burned fiercely on Lu Chuan's body. His shoulders, chest, waist, abdomen, and knees were all covered by the sun god fire. The extremely high temperature melted the thread instantly before it approached Lu Chuan. Now let me see what else you can do. Lu Chuan looked around. As soon as he saw Beihao, he would rush up without hesitation using the extreme shadow flash to engage in close combat. At this time, Beihao's figure jumped onto the wall again. This time, he looked down at Lu Chuan with a cold smile. You are surrounded. Wait for death. Lu Chuan stretched out his right hand, put his index finger and middle finger together, and pointed at Beihao. Then, the sun god fire shot from his fingertips towards Beihao. Swish! Exclamation mark. Seeing this, Beihao's heart tightened immediately, and he exerted force with his feet, and hurriedly fled from here. After barely avoiding Lu Chuan's attack, he gasped heavily, and his head was covered with cold sweat. He couldn't help but mutter to himself with nervousness, it's like walking on a tightrope to fight with such a strong man. If you are not careful, your life will hang by a thread. Then, he began to control the net arranged by the silk thread, and gathered towards the center of the yard. Snap! Suddenly, a brick fell to the ground. Lu Chuan turned his head, and saw that countless silk threads were crisscrossed and arranged to form a large net, moving towards Lu Chuan. The silk threads penetrated the wall, causing the entire courtyard wall to collapse. Boom! Exclamation mark. All three walls collapsed, and the sound of broken bricks and tiles breaking came one after another. The noise alarmed Zen Mansion, and also alarmed Gu Xiaorao and Gu Xiaosang in the house. What's that sound? Gu Xiaorao frowned slightly and listened carefully. Gu Xiaosang rubbed his chin and said, it seems that something collapsed. Could it be the wall in the yard? The two came to the window and looked out. They saw that the walls collapsed one after another. The broken wall bricks had an extremely smooth cutting surface. Obviously, this was Beihao's masterpiece. Gu Xiaorao and Gu Xiaosang saw Lu Chuan's figure, and were relieved when they saw that he was still intact. It seems very dangerous outside. Why don't we run away? If we are found by that bastard Beihao, we will be in trouble. Gu Xiaosang looked at Gu Xiaorao and suggested. Gu Xiaorao thought deeply. Although she didn't want to escape from here and leave Lu Chuan, after careful and rational thinking, she found that staying here would not be of any use. In order not to become a burden to Lu Chuan, she had no choice but to escape from here. Let's go to Mr. Zen's place first and see if they can help. Gu Xiaorao took Gu Xiaosang away from here. In the yard, Lu Chuan glanced around and laughed disdainfully. Is this your net? It's nothing more than that. In the ruins of the wall, Beihao's figure walked out from the dust. Lu Chuan, you look down on me too much, don't you? Do you think that I got the title of Xianshu City's #1 assassin for nothing? If I hadn't killed so many strong men, how could I have gotten to this position? You are just one of them. When I kill you, I will have another big point on my record board. He raised his hands in claw shape and looked at Lu Chuan with eyes full of ruthlessness and murderous intent. Today is the day you die. I will deal with those who the Lu family can't deal with. Chapter 669. Severe injury to Beihao. Beihao faced Lu Chuan directly, and the silk traps around him were shrinking. Although Lu Chuan was curious about the traps he had set up, now was not the time to ask questions. He looked at Beihao, and he did not feel nervous, as if he was facing a great enemy. Since coming to Kunlun Domain, Lu Chuan only felt a strong sense of oppression when facing Lu Xianming. He even had to force Lu Chuan to use a little trick to defeat him. But for other people, Lu Chuan did not take them seriously. Beihao in front of him had not even reached the martial emperor realm. If he was at the peak of the martial king realm, he would not even have the chance to fight him head on. This guy was so arrogant that he posted a killing order and boasted that he would kill him. Lu Chuan pulled out the soul-breaking sword behind him. A raging fire burned on the sword. You deserve to die. Lu Chuan rushed towards Beihao, not giving him any chance to dodge. He used the extreme shadow flash, flashed several times in a row, and quickly closed the distance. Beihao was frightened by the aura that erupted from Lu Chuan. Moreover, the extremely high temperature of the fire on Lu Chuan made him dare not approach him at all. He quickly retreated a few steps, jumped back, passed through the silk trap, and escaped from the trap. At this moment, Lu Chuan was in the trap, looking at the silk threads that kept gathering around him. Lu Chuan raised the long sword in his hand. The next moment, he suddenly slashed at the silk thread. Sure. Clang. The sword body collided with the silk thread, and it actually wiped out dazzling sparks. The sword body did not cut the silk thread, and the flame did not melt the silk thread at all. Lu Chuan realized at this time that this guy changed the material of the thread. Seeing this, Beiheo immediately laughed arrogantly. Ha 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 ha, do you naively think that I will be easily broken free by you like last time? This time, you are dead. There is absolutely no possibility of you escaping. Lu Chuan frowned slightly. The silk thread changed its material and could not be torn apart. The surrounding silk threads kept approaching, making Lu Chuan nervous. These silk threads can even cut stone bricks so easily, so cutting a human body is probably not a problem. Lu Chuan put away the bronze sword, and he decided to use the sun god fire to eliminate these silk threads. Beiheo put his hands on his hips and looked at Lu Chuan with a confident look. In my eyes, you are just a trapped beast fighting, and you will die. There is no way to change it. The only thing I have to do now is to slowly enjoy your death. Lu Chuan's eyes were stern, staring at Beiheo, and said coldly, you want to kill me with these things? Dream on. Lu Chuan clenched his right fist, and the sun god fire burned on his fist. The flame was dazzling, and the temperature was so hot that the surrounding air was distorted rapidly. Seeing this, Beiheo began to get nervous. He was standing more than 10 meters away, and he could still feel the high temperature released from Lu Chuan's right fist. This temperature really shocked him, and it was definitely not the temperature of an ordinary flame. He swallowed nervously, and the confidence he had at the beginning gradually disappeared from his eyes. When he looked at Lu Chuan, he began to get nervous. If this punch could break his trap, the outcome would be reversed. If the trap could not be broken, then he would definitely be the winner. At this moment, Lu Chuan suddenly punched out, and a huge and dazzling fireball gushed out instantly. Boom! Exclamation mark. The fireball covered the entire silk screen, and the flames burned fiercely on the silk thread. A wall made of silk screen suddenly turned into a wall of fire. Beiheo looked at the blazing wall of fire, and felt more and more wrong in his heart. At this moment, Lu Chuan's figure suddenly jumped out of the wall of fire, and the whole person suddenly broke through the wall of fire, with flames all over his body, and rushed towards Beiheo at lightning speed. Beiheo's eyes widened instantly. Impossible. He shouted loudly. He didn't expect that his enhanced silk thread was still completely broken by Lu Chuan. This was his last trump card. If he is not an opponent, then it shows that he is not Lu Chuan's opponent at all. This is a huge gap in strength. Boom! Exclamation mark. Lu Chuan rushed to Beiheo in an instant. Beiheo quickly raised his hands to block in front of him, ready to meet Lu Chuan's next fatal blow. Lu Chuan directly drew out the soul-breaking sword and stabbed the sword towards Beiheo's abdomen. Swish! The sword quickly pierced into Beiheo's abdomen, and blood quickly flowed out along the sword and spilled all over the ground. Beiheo retreated again and again, after feeling the pain. His face turned pale in an instant. His eyes looking at Lu Chuan were filled with fear and despair. He gradually lost his strength and began to fall to the ground. Lu Chuan squatted in front of him. Now you know who is the boss, right? Beiheo looked at Lu Chuan's calm expression and trembled all over. You, come and kill me if you want. I will never beg for mercy from you. Lu Chuan narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Beiheo. What he was curious about now was how this guy set up the silk thread trap. Moreover, he could control the silk thread and make it move forward according to his will. It was not some mechanism that pushed the silk thread forward, but his will. After a quick glance, Lu Chuan placed his eyes on Beiheo's right hand. He saw that Beiheo was wearing 5 rings on his right hand. There were iron chains between the rings. Obviously, these 5 rings were inseparable. Lu Chuan smiled faintly. What are you wearing on your hand? Beiheo was immediately extremely flustered. He quickly pulled his right hand behind his back and stared at Lu Chuan nervously. The silk thread you arranged was made of these rings, right? Beiheo said coldly. You have a rich imagination. This is just decoration. Really? Then tell me where your silk thread is? I don't need to tell you. He gritted his teeth and stared at Lu Chuan as if he had a stubborn meaning. Lu Chuan just smiled faintly. It doesn't matter. After you die, I will take off the ring casually. This thing will be mine in the future. I can study it slowly. Beiheo was extremely flustered, and his eyes glanced left and right, as if he was thinking about something. Don't let your imagination run wild. You can't fool me. Tell me the truth. What kind of ring is this? Is the silk thread you arranged relying on this thing? Beiheo hesitated for a long time and finally nodded helplessly. Yes, it was made of this ring. It was also with this treasure that I became the #1 assassin in Xianshu City. This was originally the gate treasure of Xianwu sect. My master gave it to me to practice and to train me to be the future leader of the sect. It's just that something unexpected happened in the middle, which led to me leaving Xianwu sect and fighting alone with this ring. Lu Chuan nodded slightly. Cooperate with me well, and I will not let you leave too painfully. Now, tell me about the situation of Xianwu sect. Beiheo took a deep breath. If you can spare my life, I will tell you everything. Chapter 670 Ring Magical Instrument. Beiheo was seriously injured and lying on the ground, looking at Lu Chuan nervously. Lu Chuan walked up to him and said, "Spare your life? How is that possible? You are dead today. No one can save you." Beiheo gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, "If you dare to kill me, the head of Xianwu sect will not spare you." Hearing this, Lu Chuan sneered, "The 2 elders of your sect died in my hands, so why should I be afraid of the head? Whether I kill you or not, Xianwu sect will not spare me. So, you will definitely die today. Hand over this thing first." Lu Chuan's eyes were on the 5 rings on his right hand. Beiheo quickly put his right hand behind his back and shouted, "You don't deserve this thing. It's not up to you to say whether you deserve it or not. This thing must be very precious to you. If so, I must take it." All of Beiheo's methods are based on the sharp silk thread traps he can set up, and the source of these silk threads is the rings on his right hand. Therefore, this ring is definitely the most precious thing in his body. Lu Chuan directly pulled out his right hand and pulled the ring twice. Seeing the ring being taken away, Beiheo gritted his teeth and roared, "Arsehole, Xian woman will definitely kill you. It's a pity that you won't see that day. Go to hell." Lu Chuan knew that this guy was stubborn enough, and no matter how much he questioned, he couldn't get any information. So, he stabbed with a sword and pierced Beiheo's chest. Blood spurted out immediately, and Beiheo died on the spot. Lu Chuan retracted the sword, wiped off the blood, and put the sword into the scabbard. Then, he began to look at the rings in his hand carefully. All 5 rings are made of silver and white, shining with metallic luster. The rings are fixed by chains, indicating that the 5 rings are integrated and inseparable. Lu Chuan put the ring on his right hand, and then he felt that the ring was like an empty container, and he could input the spiritual energy in his body into it. As Lu Chuan circulated the spiritual energy in his body, it was gradually input into the ring. Gradually, he saw silk threads coming out of the ring. Then he swung his right hand hard. Swish. The silk thread was like a long whip, making an air explosion sound and whipping forward. A stone brick was whipped by the silk thread and instantly exploded and shattered into a pile of stones. Seeing this power, Lu Chuan couldn't help but marvel in his heart. This magic weapon is indeed extraordinary. No wonder this guy can become the #1 assassin in Xianshu City after getting this thing. It seems that this thing is indeed unusual. However, Lu Chuan and this thing are not compatible with each other, and it is not suitable to use it. First of all, the divine fire in Lu Chuan's body can burn the silk thread. Secondly, Lu Chuan already has a sword. If he has another weapon, it will be a little cumbersome to fight, and it will be a long road to practice swordsmanship alone. If he is distracted to learn other things, it will hinder the speed of progress. Then, he took off the ring and put it in his pocket. At this time, everyone in the Zen mansion gradually came over. When they saw the ruins, they couldn't help but marvel at it. The fight between the 2 men was so huge that it destroyed all the surrounding walls. When Gu Xiaorao saw that Lu Chuan was safe and sound, she ran towards him. "Lu Chuan, you are not hurt." Lu Chuan smiled and said, "Of course not. Beiheo has been killed by me, so you don't have to worry anymore." Gu Xiaorao was relieved. "That's good. Beiheo is finally dead, and Xiaosang and I can go out with peace of mind in the future." Gu Xiaosang also came over, glanced at Beiheo's body, and couldn't help shaking her head and sighing, "What a tragic death. Sister, we can finally return to normal life." She walked to Gu Xiaorao's side. Zangiliu then walked towards Lu Chuan. "Mr. Lu's strength is really extraordinary. Beiheo tried his best, but he is still no match for you." Lu Chuan smiled faintly, "But it's not over yet. Xianwu sect is not dead yet. Their leader and great elder will not give up." Zhang Giliu chuckled. Who can the Xian Wu sect, which has lost 2 elders, beat now? Whether they dare to take action is another matter. Lu Chuan nodded slightly. By the way, who is the leader of Xian Wu sect? His name is Zhu Wu. His strength ranks among the top 5 in Xianshu city. It may be a bit difficult for you to face this guy. If you fight directly at Xian Wu sect, you will probably be at a disadvantage. Xian Wu sect has no shortage of top level strongmen, but it has no shortage of strongmen with middle level strength. If those hundreds of warriors attack you together, it will still be very troublesome. Lu Chuan nodded slightly. I understand. The location of Xian Wu Gate is not in Xianshu city, so they can't come here for a while. If there is any news about Xian Wu Gate, tell me as soon as possible. Zhang Giliu nodded. No problem. I will let everyone in the Zen mansion keep a close eye on it and tell you when there is news. Then, Lu Chuan glanced at the yard. It's a mess here. Clean it up. Zhang Giliu looked at the servants next to him, waved his hand, and said, go, clean up the ruins, and don't affect other people's lives. Lu Chuan looked back at Gu Xiaorao and walked towards her. Take this thing. Lu Chuan took out Bei Heo's ring and handed it to Gu Xiaorao. Gu Xiaorao looked at it and asked curiously, what is this? Isn't Bei Heo able to set up silk threads as traps and weapons? He made them with this thing. Try it later and see if it works. If it works, you can wear it as an extra way to save your life. Gu Xiaorao nodded slightly and then took the ring. This ring looks very ordinary, but I didn't expect it to have such a miraculous effect. She put the ring on the 5 fingers of her right hand, frowned slightly, and carefully felt the existence of this magic weapon. I can inject spiritual energy into it and then release silk threads. It seems to work well. Then, 5 thin silk threads extended from the 5 rings. I guess this magic weapon is of high quality, otherwise it would not be the treasure of Xian Wu sect, and Bei Heo would not have such a powerful strength. Hearing this, Gu Xiaorao was so surprised that her mouth opened wide. This thing is the treasure of Xian Wu sect? Yes, I don't know why it was brought out by Bei Heo. Gu Xiaosang came over and looked at the ring with curiosity. Is this thing so precious? This is the first time I have seen such a rare treasure. Lu Chuan smiled and said, practice how to use it well. This thing will be yours in the future. Gu Xiaorao nodded slightly. No problem. I will work hard to learn how to use it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 671, Xian Wu Sect Leader. Lu Chuan only knew that the ring he got from Bei Heo could release silk threads, but he didn't know what it was called, where it came from, or whether it had other uses. All of these, I'm afraid, can only be clarified by going to Xian Wuman. As it was getting dark, Lu Chuan returned to his room to rest. Gu Xiaorao, on the other hand, stood in the yard, constantly practicing how to use this magic weapon. The 5 silk threads were extremely sharp and powerful. Several wooden stakes placed in the yard were smashed to pieces by her in a short while. In the evening, Zhan Xianyu returned to the Zen mansion exhausted. That bastard Bei Heo killed nearly 20 people in their martial arts school. Just dealing with the aftermath consumed a lot of his energy. So much so that he is now panting and exhausted both physically and mentally. As soon as he walked in, he grabbed a servant and asked hurriedly, how is Mr. Lu doing? Didn't that bastard Bei Heo come to attack him? The servant hurriedly said respectfully, my lord, that guy Bei Heo came in the afternoon. He approached our courtyard and attacked Mr. Lu. What was the result? Zhan Xianyu asked hurriedly. Of course Mr. Lu won. That guy Bei Heo is dead, and the Zen mansion is going to announce the death to the whole city, so that everyone in the city will let down their guard. Zhan Xianyu let out a long sigh. This Bei Heo is really ignorant of life and death. He was lucky to escape last time, but he didn't give up. Now, he has lost his life. Zhan Xianyu rubbed his forehead and suddenly showed a worried look. Lu Chuan killed so many people from the Xian Wu sect. He was going to destroy their sect. I'm afraid that the Xian Wu sect will fight him to the death. He sighed helplessly. As the largest martial arts sect in Xianxu City, Xianwu sect will gradually decline and become a second-rate sect in this battle with Lu Chuan. Although they still have the head and the elder to support them, they can't support themselves alone. The loss of several strong men will have a great impact. Late at night, Lu Chuan sat on the bed and took out the branches of the sacred tree. Before going to bed every day, he would absorb the spiritual energy in the branches. The body keeps the spiritual energy in a state of abundant sleep and constantly absorbs and refines during sleep, so that all time can be used for cultivation to the greatest extent. Lu Chuan is now in the 9th level of the nascent soul realm, and there is only one step away from breaking through to the spiritual severing realm. However, this key step is a huge step. Without accumulating enough spiritual energy and finding enough materials, it is impossible to complete this key breakthrough. Lu Chuan knows this very well, and he also knows that he should prepare for the next breakthrough. Lu Chuan absorbed a lot of the spiritual energy of the branches of the sacred tree. The spiritual energy foundation in his body has been perfected, and the only opportunity left is to complete the breakthrough. It was midnight before Lu Chuan lay down on the bed and fell asleep. The next morning, Lu Chuan got up early. As soon as he got up, he heard a burst of air explosions outside. Bang, bang. Lu Chuan opened the window and saw Gu Xiaorao standing in the yard. There were a few more wooden stakes in the middle of the yard for her to practice. It can be seen that she likes this new weapon very much and is practicing very hard. After Lu Chuan finished washing and walked out of the room, Gu Xiaorao stopped her movements after seeing Lu Chuan and walked towards him. I have almost mastered it, and there is no problem using it in actual combat. Gu Xiaorao showed a proud smile. From her appearance, she wanted to seek Lu Chuan's praise. Lu Chuan smiled and said, "It seems that you have a good talent. You can get started with any weapon quickly. Of course, and this magic weapon is of high quality, so I have the motivation to practice. Let's have breakfast." The three came to the middle of the yard, sat at the stone table, and began to eat. Suddenly, a burst of footsteps came, and Zhen Xianyu hurried over. "Lu Chuan, there is news." Lu Chuan looked up at Zhen Xianyu. "What news?" "Anzu Wu is coming to Xianxu City, and his itinerary has been confirmed. He is coming to see you." However, he did not show too much anger. He said he wanted to talk to you. Lu Chuan nodded slightly. "What does he want to talk about? What else can he talk about? It must be about you killing their people. Then what else is he going to talk about? Shouldn't he just attack me directly?" Zhan Xianyu laughed. "You are in the Zen mansion now. If he kills directly over, wouldn't he have to fight with our Zen mansion? That guy is definitely not stupid, so he wants to talk to you. If he makes an appointment to meet you alone, it will be another one-on-one fight." Lu Chuan nodded slightly. "Then let's talk about it when he comes. By the way, is there any news from the Lu family?" "Not yet. I don't know what plan they are planning." Lu Chuan picked up a piece of food with chopsticks and put it in his mouth. "I know. Let's talk about it when Anzu Wu comes." "Okay, but I have to remind you in advance that Anzu Wu's strength is at the martial emperor level. In the entire Xianxu city, there are no more than 5 warriors in the martial emperor realm. So, you must be prepared. This is a strong enemy." "I see. It's not like I haven't fought a warrior before." Zhan Xianyu was relieved when he heard this. "Then I'll leave first." Gu Xiaorao looked at Lu Chuan and asked curiously, "Do you think this Anzu Wu came to you for something else?" Lu Chuan shook his head slightly. "I killed so many people from their sect. He must be looking for trouble with me. Don't think too much about it. Let's talk about it when that guy arrives." However, what surprised me most is that the Lu family has not responded until now. It's really strange. Could it be that they have other more important things to deal with? Lu Chuan shook his head slightly, too lazy to think about it. As long as he gradually approached the Lu family, he would naturally understand what they were doing now. After finishing breakfast, Gu Xiaorao continued to practice the weapon she had just obtained. Lu Chuan returned to the room and began to absorb the spiritual energy in the branches of the sacred tree. Gu Xiaosang was bored, so he returned to his room, found a chair to sit and meditate, and absorbed the spiritual energy from the branches of the sacred tree. At the same time, at the gate of Xianxu City, a figure wearing a white cloak slowly walked in. Behind him, There were more than a dozen people, all wearing the same martial arts uniform. The leader was the head of the Cheyenne Wu sect, Anzu Wu. Although he was nearly 40 years old, he looked a little younger, with a heroic look between his eyebrows, and an easygoing temperament all over his body. After he walked into the city gate, a man came up behind him. "Master Un, are we going to settle accounts with that bastard now?" the man asked angrily. "You don't need to be excited, I want to have a good chat with him. What else is there to talk about? That bastard killed so many people, he should have died long ago." Zhao Shengyang stood up and said angrily. Chapter 672, Visit. After Anzu Wu entered Xianshu City, the group walked quickly on the street. The passers-by around saw this, and immediately recognized Anzu Wu. When everyone saw him, they all saluted respectfully, not daring to be negligent. There were even a few old women who pulled their sons to him, and begged them to accept them as disciples. But of course they were rejected. Anzu Wu walked towards the Zen mansion, and soon, they arrived at the door of the Zen mansion. "Master Un, do we need to visit them so anxiously? Is it important to see that bastard?" Zhao Shengyang asked curiously. "Shengyang, I know your master was killed, and you are very angry, but after you go in later, don't talk nonsense, everything will be explained by me." Zhao Shengyang was very puzzled. He could not see any anger on Anzu Wu's face. Is he too cunning, or does he really not take it seriously? Anzu Wu looked at the two guards and said, "Go in and inform the people in your house, and tell them that I, Anzu Wu, am here. Wait a minute." Then, one of them turned, and entered the house. He quickly ran towards Zangiliu's house. Zangiliu was exercising in the yard, and the guard hurried over and said, "Master, Anzu Wu, the head of the Cheyenne Wu sect, is here to visit." Zangiliu stopped, stood there, looked at the guard, and asked, "Why is this man here so quickly? What is he here for?" He didn't say anything, just asked me to come and inform. "Master, do you want to let him in? He is the head of the Cheyenne Wu sect after all. If I turn him away, it would be too arrogant. Let him in." The head of the Cheyenne Wu sect came in person, so he naturally didn't dare to neglect him. Soon, Anzu Wu walked in. Zangiliu saw this, and hurried over to greet him. "Master Un, how have you been recently? Why did you think of visiting our Zen family?" Anzu Wu showed a kind smile on his face, and said, "Grandpa Zen is in good health now. It should be thanks to that man, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have insisted on protecting him. I don't need to think too much, I know who you are here for. Then tell me, what are you going to do? Revenge? Or?" Zhao Shengyang shouted angrily, "Of course it's revenge. Let that bastard get out, he must pay with his life." Zangiliu's face turned cold. "Goodbye, the Zen mansion does not welcome you." Anzu Wu quickly raised his hand and said, "Don't worry, Grandpa Zan, Shengyang is still young, and he acts rashly. You have to bear with me." "Zhao Shengyang, you have forgotten everything I said to you when I came, right?" Zhao Shengyang felt very aggrieved. "Master, why should we talk nicely to these bastards? They are our enemies." Anzu Wu's face turned cold, and a cold murderous aura burst out of his body. When Zhao Shengyang felt it, he trembled all over. "Shut up, or go back." Zhao Shengyang nodded helplessly. Although he was very unhappy, he could only swallow this grievance. "I came to find Lu Chuan. I want to talk to him." "What to talk about?" Zangiliu asked. "I'm not here to fight him, nor am I here to seek revenge on him. I just want to have a good talk with him, to discuss some matters of cooperation." Zangiliu burst into laughter. "You want to cooperate with him? Cooperation on what? Don't fool me. If you have any schemes and calculations, you'd better give them up as soon as possible. It's useless." Anzu Wu smiled faintly. "Master Zen is really overthinking it. Everything I said is true. I want to cooperate with him on something. As for what it is specifically, you don't need to know for the time being. Also, I want to ask you something. Do you know why the Lu family has not responded yet?" Zangiliu frowned, touched his chin, and asked, "Why? The Lu family is not the only overlord level family in Kunlun domain. They are now stuck in the quagmire, and dragged into a family war. Their main combat power is all tied up, and no one can come to deal with Lu Chuan." Zangiliu suddenly became curious. What family can make the Lu family fight so hard? "You don't need to know this. It's useless to know it. Xianshu City is too far away from the core. What happens there has nothing to do with us. Okay, let me go see Luchuan now. I want to talk to him about something important. Zangilio nodded helplessly. Then I'll tell Luchuan that, if he is willing to see you, then you can meet him. If he doesn't want to see you, then please go back. Zhao Shengyang couldn't hold back again. Who is he? He doesn't want to see us, so our leader has to ask him to go back. He's too proud. I'm putting it here. If you have any objections, either come and fight or get out. Zhao Shengyang was choked and speechless. And Zhuwu looked at Zhao Shengyang. Your master is dead. Is there no one who can suppress you? Zhao Shengyang quickly admitted his weakness. That's not the case. I will listen to the leader's words. Then shut up honestly. If you dare to talk too much again, I will clean up the house. Zhao Shengyang trembled all over and suddenly became nervous. Then, Zangilio walked towards Luchuan's house. From a distance, he saw Gu Xiaorao who was practicing. Without the wall, he could see the scene in the yard from a distance. Xiaorao, where is your husband? Gu Xiaorao stopped, her face slightly red, and raised her hand to point to the guest room. He is practicing inside. Zangilio nodded slightly. Okay, you continue. I won't disturb you. He came to the door and knocked. Mr. Lu, it's me, Zangilio. Old man, please come in. Zangilio pushed open the door and walked into the room. Seeing Gu Xiaosang sitting at the table eating an apple, she smiled brightly when she saw Zangilio coming in. Zangilio also smiled back and looked at Luchuan who was sitting on the bed. Mr. Lu, you may not have thought that the head of Xian Wu sect has come to Zhen's house. Luchuan hurriedly got out of bed and walked towards Zangilio. What is he doing here? He said he wanted to talk to you. What is there to talk about? That's what I said, but he said he just wanted to talk to you. No ill intentions. Luchuan sneered. No ill intentions. How can I not believe it? Then, how about I drive him away? Luchuan raised his hand to interrupt Zangilio. No need, since he is here. I won't let him make a wasted trip. Go talk to him and see what he has to say. In this Zhen's house, I'm afraid he doesn't dare to do anything. You still have to be careful. Be careful that this guy's really here for revenge. Zangilio reminded. Don't worry, I won't be fooled by this guy. Since he wants to talk to me, I will chat with him. Luchuan put on his clothes and walked out of the room. Gu Xiaorao walked over and asked, are you going out? No, I'm going to see someone. Who? The head of Xian Wu sect, and Zhu Wu. Chapter 673 The Lu family's trouble. After arriving at the yard, Luchuan immediately saw Zhu Wu. He was standing there alone, and all the followers he brought were left outside. He looked at Luchuan with a kind smile on his face. Seeing this, Luchuan felt a little strange. There must be something wrong. This guy actually came to him with a smile on his face. What he wanted to talk about must be not simple. Luchuan walked towards Zhu Wu. Master Ren, why are you so anxious to come to me? Luchuan looked at him and asked. And Zhu Wu laughed and then sat down on the chair next to him. Let's talk slowly. Luchuan didn't say much. He pulled out a chair and sat down. And Zhu Wu looked at Zangilio and said, can you please step aside for a moment? Zangilio said coldly, this is my Zhen mansion. You want me to step aside? And Zhu Wu sighed helplessly. I have something to discuss with Mr. Lu, and I can't let outsiders know for the time being. If he listens to it, he can definitely tell you. Then you will know naturally. I'll leave for a while. Sorry for the trouble. Seeing that his attitude was okay, Zangilio didn't care anymore and turned around and left. Mr. Lu, if you encounter any trouble, just come to me. This is the Zhen mansion. Outsiders can't show off. Zangilio left this sentence before leaving, and Luchuan smiled and responded, don't worry, Mr. Zhan. This was actually said to Zhu Wu, telling him not to have any bad thoughts in this Zhen mansion, and to talk about things properly. And Zhu Wu looked at Luchuan, took a deep breath, and his expression became solemn. Just say what you want to say. And Zhu Wu nodded slightly, and then said, do you know why the Lu family has been silent for so long? I don't know. If I knew, I would be shocked. It's like this. They can't spare any hands to deal with you for the time being. In other words, their Lu family doesn't have any free strong people to deal with this matter now. They are fighting with another family in Kunlun domain. This family is not very famous. It belongs to a hidden family. It has been dormant in Kunlun domain for more than 10 years. Let them find an opportunity to counterattack. If successful, it will pull down the dominant position of the Lu family, and the ruling level of the entire Kunlun domain will undergo tremendous changes. Lu Chuan nodded slightly. Then I roughly understand. The Lu family can't protect itself, so they don't plan to take action against me for the time being. That's right, but it's hard to say who will win or lose in the fight between the two families. You might as well tell me directly what the family fighting the Lu family is called. And Zuwu nodded slightly. No problem. This family is the Dongfang family. All family members have the surname Dongfang. They were originally one of the top 10 powerful families in Kunlun domain. But they refused to obey the Lu family's discipline and were beaten down early. So, they began to lie dormant in the surrounding areas, waiting for an opportunity to strike. And Zuwu looked at Lu Chuan seriously, and then said, "So, you should understand why I came to you?" Lu Chuan shook his head slightly. "You might as well tell me directly. Do you want to help the Lu family or the Dongfang family?" "Of course I stand on the side of the Dongfang family. You are the enemy of the Lu family. If I come to trouble you, I will stand on the side of the Lu family." Lu Chuan suddenly realized, and immediately understood why the man in front of him came this time. "You are really brave. Are you going to discuss with me how to overthrow the Lu family?" And Zuwu smiled awkwardly. "You can understand it this way." He picked up the teapot and poured a cup of tea for Lu Chuan. "You should have no reason to refuse. One more helper means one more hope. The strength of the Lu family is not something you can contend with alone. Although you are very strong, so strong that it makes people afraid, the Lu family is a behemoth after all. It is really a pipe dream for you to fight against this family on your own." Lu Chuan nodded slightly. "I agree with you. So what do you mean? You can come to our Cheyenne Wu sect first, and then get in touch with the people of the Dongfang family, and you will naturally know to what extent the two families are fighting now." Lu Chuan picked up the teacup and took a sip. "So you came to me for this? I killed so many people in your sect. Don't you hate me?" And Zuwu smiled bitterly. "What does it matter whether I hate you or not? If I fight with you, the outcome is hard to say, and the loss is still huge. If you can go back to Cheyenne Wu sect with me, we will help the Dongfang family accomplish this great cause, and help the Dongfang family change the upper structure of Kunlun domain. Then, what does the loss of 2 elders of my Cheyenne Wu sect matter? By then, my Cheyenne Wu sect will be able to rank among the top 10 martial arts sects in Kunlun domain. The great cause I envision cannot be blinded by the hatred in front of me. Moreover, as long as Cheyenne Wu sect continues to advance triumphantly, the vacant elder seat will naturally be filled by a strong man." And Zuwu smiled faintly. "If you are willing, you can take the position of elder, which is not a bad idea." Lu Chuan waved his hand slightly and smiled. "Forget it, but I think your suggestion is not bad. I can consider going to your Cheyenne Wu sect." And Zuwu, "Don't wait for me to go there. There is a hangman banquet waiting for me." And Zuwu quickly became serious. "Mr. Lu, you are really worrying too much. Don't worry. If you don't want to meet in Cheyenne Wu sect, you can meet at the foot of the mountain. I have no second thoughts." He raised his hand and swore with a serious expression. Lu Chuan nodded slightly. "No problem. I can go with you." And Zuwu's face suddenly showed an excited smile. "Then, shall we set off now?" "No problem. I'll go tell them." Lu Chuan got up and went back to the room, while Zuwu sat in the yard and waited quietly. After Lu Chuan returned to the room, Gu Xiaorao and Gu Xiaosang hurried over. "So, what did that man say when he came over?" Gu Xiaorao asked curiously. "He really didn't come here to cause trouble. In fact, he came to cooperate with me." Gu Xiaorao was immediately surprised and asked hurriedly, "Cooperation? What does he want to cooperate with you on? No way. This should be a trap. Why would he cooperate with you?" Gu Xiaosang asked in confusion. Lu Chuan shrugged helplessly. "It's about the Lu family. Recently, a newly rising family is competing with the Lu family for status. And the Cheyenne Wu sect wants to help this family, so that when the situation in Kunlun domain changes drastically, they can take advantage of the chaos and gain benefits. So, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's why he came to invite me to cooperate." After all, if this matter is successful, the benefits obtained by their Xianwu sect will be much greater than those of the so-called two elders. As long as you have strength and status, the positions of the second elder and the third elder will be filled by many strong people. Gu Xiaorao suddenly realized after hearing this. I see, no wonder they want to discuss cooperation with you. Chapter 674 Cooperation. Lu Chuan pushed the door open and walked out. Gu Xiaorao followed him out, and followed closely behind Lu Chuan. And Zuwu hurried over and asked, "Can we set off now?" He looked at Lu Chuan impatiently. "No problem, then I'll go with you." And Zuwu nodded slightly. "Okay, let's go now." At this time, Gu Xiaosang raised his hand quickly. "Lu Chuan, take us with you. You stay here, I'll go over and come back." Gu Xiaosang pouted a little dissatisfied. "Just take us with you." Suddenly, her eyes turned, and she hurriedly said, "By the way, my sister just got that magic weapon. She doesn't know how to use it yet. Since this is a treasure of Cheyenne woman must know how to use it. My sister can learn it when she goes there." She looked at Lu Chuan with a smile. "For this reason, take us over. I want to see what it's like inside Cheyenne woman." Lu Chuan sighed helplessly and then looked at him. "Zuwu, can I take them there?" "Of course I can. As long as your request is not excessive, I can meet it. As for the 5 rings on her hands, I heard that they are the treasures of your sect. Is that true?" Lu Chuan asked. And Zuwu looked at Gu Xiaorao carefully and saw the silver rings on her slender fingers and nodded slightly. "This is what Beihao took away. Since you like it, leave it to her." And Zuwu looked at Lu Chuan and said, "We can naturally teach her how to use this magic weapon in our sect. If she goes with us, she can quickly learn to use it. In that case, let's go together." Lu Chuan nodded slightly. "That's great. Let's go together. By the way, the two of them have to pack their luggage. Let's go to the door and wait for them." And Zuwu stepped forward and put his arm around Lu Chuan's shoulder, saying, "You can accompany them to pack their things. I'll wait for you at the door." After that, he patted Lu Chuan's shoulder and walked out. Lu Chuan turned around and walked towards Gu Xiaorao. "Let's go. I'll take you to pack your luggage." And Zuwu walked towards the entrance of the Zen mansion. Halfway there, Zengiliu came up and stopped him. "How did you talk to Mr. Lu?" "It's settled. He will bring the 2 young ladies to our Xianwu sect to stay for a while." Zengiliu frowned. "Why?" "Because we want to discuss cooperation and need to have an in-depth exchange." Zengiliu looked at him suspiciously. "Why are you cooperating with Lu Chuan? He killed 2 elders of your sect. Logically, you should be enemies. We have a greater common interest, so we can come together. We both have a goal we want to destroy, and we both have a way to go up. It's normal for us to reach cooperation." Zangiliu felt more and more strange. What goal can bring you two together? It can't be. He vaguely guessed something. A big enough goal, a common goal with Lu Chuan. Isn't Lu Chuan's goal to attack the Lu family? Could it be that the Cheyenne Wu sect has also burst its courage and wants to cause trouble for the Lu family? And Zuwu looked at Zangiliu with a mysterious smile. "It's just what you think. You should have guessed it. I won't tell you the details. Lu Chuan has agreed to cooperate with me. This cooperation can completely make me ignore what he has done." Zangiliu took a deep breath. "You are really brave enough. The brave will die of overeating, and the timid will die of starvation. When I die of overeating, I hope you haven't starved to death yet." Zangiliu sneered. "Don't worry, it won't happen. Don't really eat yourself to death. People are greedy and want more." And Zuwu bowed and said, "Don't bother you to worry about this." After that, he turned and walked out the door. Zangiliu sighed and shook his head helplessly. He knew that Lu Chuan's goal was to destroy the Lu family, and his Zen family would definitely not be able to provide any help, so he could only wish Lu Chuan a good journey in the future. At this time, at the gate of the Zen mansion, more than a dozen core disciples of the Cheyenne Wu sect stood here and were talking enthusiastically. There has been no movement for a long time. Could a fight have started? How is that possible? Our leader said that we came here to discuss cooperation, not to fight. Indeed, leader N never speaks empty words. He is not really here to discuss cooperation, is he? Zhao Shengyang immediately retorted harshly. "What nonsense are you talking about? That bastard killed 2 elders of our sect and also killed Beiheo. How could we let him go? If we don't skin him alive, it would be considered a light release. Don't be anxious. The leader does not seem to be here to seek revenge. It seems like he is here to discuss cooperation normally. You are thinking too much. Zhao Shengyang snorted coldly, HMPH. If the leader doesn't take action against that bastard, then I will do it myself. At this time, a person next to him sneered. You were next to your master when he died. Why didn't you do it yourself then? Zhao Shengyang suddenly got angry and shouted, what do you know? I was going to find helpers to deal with Lu Chuan at that time, but senior brother Beiheo said that he didn't need me and asked me to wait. Otherwise, I would have done it long ago. His words were so stubborn that the other disciples just smiled and didn't bother to say anything more. Among these people, there were disciples taught by several elders, and there were also disciples taught by the headmaster. These people basically represented the future of Xian Wu sect. At this time, Anzu Wu came out, and a group of disciples quickly surrounded him. Master An, how is the situation? Master, what did you talk about with that guy Lu Chuan? Are we going back now? Or should we stay here? Zhao Shengyang asked hurriedly. Master, shouldn't we do something to that bastard? He is our enemy. Shut up. Lu Chuan will come out later, and I will announce something to you. You all have to witness it. You are the future of Xian Wu sect. I must let you witness something today, to let you know the future development of Xian Wu sect. Everyone looked at each other, feeling a little confused. They didn't know what Anzu Wu was keeping in suspense, and they were all confused. Zhao Shengyang was so anxious that he scratched his head. He wanted to seek revenge on Lu Chuan right now. He couldn't wait any longer. At this moment, the door opened, and Lu Chuan walked out slowly. When Zhao Shengyang saw Lu Chuan, his expression suddenly became solemn. He couldn't help but take 2 steps back, and his muscles tensed up. After Lu Chuan came out, he walked towards Anzu Wu. Master An, everything is ready, we can set off. Chapter 675 Heading to Xian Wu Gate. When Lu Chuan came out, it was beyond everyone's expectation. They could all see that the relationship between Lu Chuan and Anzu Wu was not tense, and they were very easygoing, not like enemies at all. This made people wonder, what did the 2 of them talk about just now? As soon as Lu Chuan came out, Guzaya and Guzaya Sang followed. The other disciples looked embarrassed when they saw the 2 girls with perfect figures and looks. They had been practicing martial arts since they were young and had never seen such beautiful girls. Anzu Wu looked at everyone and said, these 3 will go back to Xian Wuman with us, and will go with you. At this time, Zhao Shengyang stood up and shouted in dissatisfaction, Master, have you forgotten something? This man just killed our 2 elders and Beiheo. He is our enemy. Zhao Shengyang, don't speak carelessly. Don't say anything that will affect unity. Now, Mr. Lu is my friend, and also a friend of our Xian Wuman. As soon as these words came out, everyone present was dumbfounded. Looking at Anzu Wu's figure, they felt unbelievable. Lu Chuan actually became a friend of their Xian Wuman, and a friend of him, Anzu Wu. This was completely beyond their expectations, and even made them think they were hallucinating. Zhao Shengyang took 2 steps back, and looked at Anzu Wu in disbelief. Master An, how can you say this? He is our enemy. He emphasized again loudly. Anzu Wu glared at him. If you don't accept it, you can get out of Xian Wuman. If you dare to say another word of nonsense, I will not forgive you. Zhao Shengyang was frightened and trembled all over. He quickly closed his mouth and stopped talking. At this time, Zhen Gilead came out, as well as Zhen Xianai and Zhen Xianheng, and some other people from the Zhen family. Mr. Lu, when you have time to return to Xianxu City, you must visit our Zhen family. We welcome you very much. Zhan Gilead said with a smile. Lu Chuan nodded slightly. I will. If I come to Xianxu City again one day, I will definitely visit you first. Mr. Lu, it is really a great blessing for our Zhen family to meet you. If I hadn't met you, my father's illness would probably not be cured until now. Zhan Xianai walked forward with great gratitude, held Lu Chuan's hand with both hands, and shook it vigorously twice. Lu Chuan smiled faintly. Go back. I'm leaving now. We'll meet again in the mountains and rivers. Okay, see you another day. Then, Lu Chuan and his group followed Nzuwu and his group, and left the Zen mansion. Lu Chuan and Nzuwu walked side by side, and the others followed behind. Mr. Lu, I have prepared a carriage outside the city. We will get on the carriage when we leave the city and head to Xianwu Mountain. What is Xianwu Mountain? It's a mountain occupied by our sect. There is abundant spiritual energy there. As we grew stronger, we called the mountain Xianwu Mountain, and the people in Xianxu City followed suit. Nzuwu said with a smile. Have the people from the Danfang family you mentioned arrived in your sect? Yes, several of them have already arrived, and want to cooperate with us on some things. Of course, they specifically asked to see you. As long as I can take you there, they will be very happy, and will give you some rewards. You can talk to them when you get there. Lu Chuan nodded slightly. The disciples behind them were all confused. How did these two get to talk to each other? Logically, they should have a deep hatred. Not only were they confused, but the passers-by also felt strange. Isn't this sect leader An? The leader of Xianwu sect? Why is he walking with Lu Chuan? What's going on? What the hell? How can these two walk together? Aren't they enemies? Oh my god, am I dazzled? These two are actually walking on the street talking and laughing. Does sect leader An not know that this guy is wanted by the Lu family? He is still walking, so close to him. Aren't you afraid of being affected? You are so brave. What is Xianwu sect planning to do? Passers-by were talking, but Lu Chuan and Nzuwu turned a deaf ear to them. The two soon arrived at the city gate. Outside the gate, two carriages were parked. Both carriages were very grand and luxurious. Each carriage had 4 horses as power, and they ran very fast. Nzuwu, Lu Chuan, Guziaora and Guziasang were sitting in the first carriage. They seemed to have a lot of space and extra space. The carriage behind was filled with more than a dozen disciples, which seemed a bit crowded. The carriage began to move away from Xianxu City. Lu Chuan sat in the carriage, looked at Nzuwu, and asked, didn't you send people to find the branches of the sacred tree before? Don't you care about this matter anymore? Nzuwu smiled awkwardly. There is no way. I'm not your opponent. I can only accept my fate. This thing can only be left in the hands of the strong. Whoever is strong can hold it. But, holding this thing can also make me stronger, which is a positive cycle. That's true, but I want to know, are the people of the Danfang family also planning to get this branch? Nzuwu pondered for a moment, shook his head slightly. I don't know about this. Let's talk about it when we get there. You will know everything if you ask in person. Lu Chuan nodded helplessly. At this time, Guziaora looked at Nzuwu and asked, Master An, what is the origin of this magic weapon in my hand? It's called Usikaianain, and it's a relatively rare magic weapon. Although its quality is not the best, it is also a good treasure in Kunlun domain. It can be used as the gate treasure of our sect. There is absolutely no problem. There is also a secret book in our sect, which records in detail how to use this magic weapon. Beihao stole the secret book, and escaped from the sect with this magic weapon. Lu Chuan asked curiously, why was Beihao driven out of the sect by you? It can't be said to be driven out, he escaped. After he got this magic weapon, he used it very well, and was unwilling to return it. He practiced the secret book every day, until he mastered it. No young disciple in the sect can match him. He feels that he will be my successor sooner or later, so there is no problem in taking this magic weapon away now. At that time, he already thought that the magic weapon belonged to him. I ordered him to return it, but he was so angry that he chose a time to escape from Xianwu sect, taking the magic weapon with him. From then on, he was no longer a member of our Xianwu sect. He wandered around Xianxu City, relying on assassinating others for rewards to survive. Xianxu City is too complicated, and the area is too large, so we were too lazy to chase this guy. Unexpectedly, he died in your hands. It can be regarded as a perfect end to his arrogant life. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.